Call to order the public hearing of the City of Los Angeles Charter Reform Commission. We're going to begin this evening with the Pledge of Allegiance. We have a number of distinguished Valley people on our panel, and of our commission panel, but no one is more appropriate to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance than our senior member and former councilman from the Valley, Bob Wilkinson. Bob, could you take us through the pledge?
Would you all rise, please? Place your hand over the heart. Follow me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Play ball.
Thank you. Now I'd like to call on Dr. Tyree Weeder, President of Valley College, to give us the official welcome.
Thank you very much, and I do appreciate the opportunity to welcome our distinguished commissioners and our community members to Valley College. We are very pleased that you have decided to join us this evening in what I think is going to be a very interesting discussion. I have to say to you that as an educator, I think that it's extremely important, the work that you're going to be doing, and that it's going to provide for our city an opportunity that I think is going to help our business community, help our educational community. It is important that Los Angeles, which I think is one of the best city in the world, I happen to have been born here, also be a model for an excellent city charter. And I think the work that you have embarked upon is going to move us in that direction and get us to where we need to be. So I want to thank the audience for coming and to congratulate you for your support of your city. And I would like to offer my best wishes to all of you for taking on this awesome task. But I know that the work that you will do will make this a much better city. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Weeder. Rafe Sonnenschein, could you please read the roll?
Okay. Marguerite Archie Hudson.
Here.
Luann Boylan.
Here.
Anton Kalea.
Here.
Miguel Contreras. Jose de Sosa. Edmund Edelman. Andrew Friedman. Alexandra Glickman.
Here.
Linda Griego. Andrew Henderson.
Here.
George Kiefer.
Here.
Stuart Quo. Joe Mandel.
Here.
Tim McCosker.
Here.
Gloria Michelle. Doris Nelson.
Here.
Judge James Reese. Marianne Reyes.
Here.
Sharon Schuster.
Here.
Kenneth Thomas. And Robert Wilkinson.
Here. We have a quorum. I'm George Kiefer, and I know I speak for all the commissioners in welcoming you and having you welcome us to this hearing. We are very excited to be holding our first hearing in the Valley. The Valley has taken a lead role in bringing charter reform as an issue to the public's attention, and so it's appropriate that we're here today. I want to give additional thanks to Cal State Northridge and the Daily News for co-sponsoring this hearing. Whatever we do tonight, I want to make clear to all of you that this represents only a beginning of our broad outreach program to involve the citizens throughout the city in the process of charter reform. I want to ask if there are any elected commission members in the audience or candidates for the elected commission. Please let us know and we'll introduce you. I do know that Bennett Kaiser is here, a candidate in the 13th district, I believe. Bennett. Also, I saw earlier former Councilman Hernani Bernardi, who is here and who is, I think, going to be speaking to us a little bit. I also saw in the audience former Congresswoman Bobby Fiedler. Thank you for joining us. Now I'd like to call on Dr. Sonnenschein to introduce the commission staff and make some other announcements.
Some of the people you may have seen walking around here are people who have been working very hard on behalf of the commission, and I encourage you to chat with any of them and ask them about what we're doing and make contact with them. I am the executive director, and it's a tremendous pleasure and honor to work with this very fine commission. And we also have, I think, a really marvelous staff. I'd like to introduce the folks on the staff to you. I hope they're all in a place where we can see them. Kevin Scott, are you here? Is Kevin here? Kevin is the Deputy Director. He's former Executive Director of the Commission on State Finance at the state level. Very talented individual. George Wolfberg, is George here? If you see George Wolfberg, those of you who have worked with city government know that he was the chief administrative analyst in the CAO's office, the chief administrative office of the city, for many years. He is the director of research in our staff. Karen Kelly Tobin is my executive assistant, worked as a deputy to Councilman Marvin Browdy, long experience on these issues. Jason Parry, where are you, Jason? There is Jason, who's been here all day, making sure everything was set up just right. He is my assistant. And Estella Lopez, where are you, Estella? Estella is here somewhere in the back by the door, is arranging our next public hearing on the east side of Los Angeles and learning from everything we do this evening. These are really been a remarkable group of people to work with, and I believe we'll be able to get a lot done with this staff. I also would like to thank Valley College and Channel 35. You see all the cameras around here. Channel 35, the city channel, is televising this hearing in its entirety to be shown at a later date in full. So we're very excited about that as well.
All right, thank you, Dr. Sonnenschein. I also saw Commissioner Michelle has arrived. I know that some of the other commissioners will be arriving shortly and be taking their seats. We're going to begin with the testimony in just a moment, but if we could get the lights down just for a moment, we're going to give you a very quick overview of the commission activities and work plan. Dean, if you could move to the first slide. As you know, I think many of you, 21 members are appointed by the council, president, the city council, the city attorney, and city controller. Our first meeting was in November of 1996, just before the holidays, and we undertook the first chore of developing a mission statement, which I'll get to in just a moment. Our second major issue was seeking a director, and we conducted a national search for that position, had 39 people apply. We eventually moved it down to 8, and then 4 finalists, and selected Dr. Sonnenschein to head the staff. He has since put in place other staff members, some of which he's introduced to you tonight. And then the next task was to develop a work plan, which was essentially a blueprint for how we were going to go about our task. Next slide, please, Dean. The mission statement, I think, is important to take a look at for all of you because it is a broad mission statement. The mission of the Commission on Charter Reform is to undertake comprehensive review of the Los Angeles City Charter, to evaluate what works well and what does not, and to address any impediments to the best possible government. The goal is to present a charter that clearly defines responsibility and accountability while providing flexibility necessary to a changing society. We begin with the presumption that nothing is exempt from examination or immune from reform. Our process will be open and fair. We'll endeavor to engage all constituencies that have a stake in the outcome. We'll seek information and advice from citizens, community organizations, scholars, current and past city employees, and elected officials. We will review and consider the experience of other cities. And we will champion change that fosters a more responsive and effective government that takes best advantage of this city's promise. We have divided into 3 study groups to take a look at our work effort, one on institutions, one on management, and one on participation. In addition, we are doing in the process of creating now a legal advisory committee that I'll talk about further. Go to the institution study. The institution study group, in each of these cases, we're going to be asking what the problems are. Some of those we hope you'll bring to our attention. But with the institution study group, we'll be asking such questions as what is the proper role of the mayor, the proper role of the council, how do the citizens' commissions provide input into government decisions, what should be the role of the proprietary departments, what roles, if any, should the elected officials of the city play in the school system, and what has been the experience in comparable cities. That does not exhaust the questions, obviously, but gives you an idea of the kinds of things that the institution study group is looking at. Next, the management study group. We'll take a look, again, asking questions of what are the problems, but take a look at such issues as how does the charter deal with the delivery of services? How should the charter deal with city departments? How effective are the city's civil service, pension, and personnel systems at both protecting the rights of workers and promoting effective government? And what are the financial constraints facing the city, and can this charter better facilitate dealing with financial issues? The third study group is a participation study group, again asking questions of what the issues are, but taking a look at such questions as should the charter make provisions for neighborhood government? What powers should neighborhoods have? Should they be advisory councils or councils with formal powers? Does the election system in the city promote participation? Should election dates be changed to coincide with state and national elections? Should the council be enlarged? Finally, the Legal Advisory Committee, which will consist primarily of people outside of the commission, experts on charters in other cities. What is the role of a charter as an instrument of law? As a matter of form, what is the most appropriate for inclusion in the charter versus codified and non-codified city ordinances and regulations? What can we learn from other charters in that regard? What duplication exists in the current charter? And what internal or external inconsistency, and with respect to external inconsistency, we're talking about state or constitutional law, exists in the charter? Finally, let me go to outreach activities. We are going to be conducting a number of public hearings, community meetings of all kinds. Channel 35 will be televising this hearing along with other hearings, and we hope many of our meetings. We are creating an introductory pamphlet and video which we hope will explain to the citizens what the charter reform process is and what the charter is and how we're going to be going about our process. Dr. Sonnenschein tells me the website is up as of today. We will coordinate with the traditional and non-traditional media, involve schools and other institutions, and of course work with the elected commission. Finally, the public hearings that we have are tentatively scheduled as follows. Beyond today in the San Fernando Valley, June in East LA area, July San Pedro, August South Central, September West Los Angeles, October Mid-Wilshire, and November downtown Los Angeles. That is intended to give you an overview, and we can have the lights back up now. Unless there are questions from commissioners, we'll move directly to our first speakers. I want to introduce Warren Campbell, who is professor at Department of Political Science and co-director of the Master of Public Administration program at Cal State University Northridge. He received his PhD from Stanford University in the political science and has published widely in the area of city planning. He is a member of the California State Commission on Intergovernmental Relations and member and chair Board of Zoning Appeals for the City of Los Angeles. Dr. Campbell.
Thank you very much. My service on the Board of Zoning Appeals was sometime in the past. I want people to understand that. I don't want anybody to approach me this evening. No, I come from Cal State Northridge, and I just want to bring greetings from President Blenda Wilson, who asked me to come, and Professor Sonnenschein asked me to come and kind of break the ice this evening and just get our testimony started. President Wilson, I will tell you, would be completely out of her mind if she had come herself tonight. She's in the midst of not one, but 9 commencements during the course of 3 or 4 days, but she does send her greetings, and the university is interested in participating, and I've talked to Professor Sonnenschein about the possibility of some of our graduate students participating as interns or students in a class related to charter reform. My remarks are going to be perhaps disappointing to you because I think I'm more sanguine about both the prospect and the process than perhaps some of you want to hear. But I really, for example, was impressed with the president of Valley College when she said, "This is a very great city." This is a very great city we live in. We had friends from Switzerland here a summer or two ago, and we took them to a musical over in Century City. And in the intermission, the young man and I stepped out, and we stood on the steps, and the sky was so beautiful, and the moon was shining down, and the reflection was coming off those, at that moment, gorgeous tall buildings, and he almost knocked me over with what he said. He said, "You must be very proud of your city." And I thought to myself, I should be very proud of my city, and I haven't thought of that for years. I want to say one other thing, though, that may catch some people in the audience with a little surprise. I think we not only have a very great city, but I think we've had a very good city government. If you look at history, if you look around the world, you have to say that the city government, with all of its difficulties, I know we need to revise the charter. I've been speaking on that for over 30 years. I've been around so long that I went out for Mayor Yorty and spoke on this subject, and when John Bolins was writing his recommendations way back in the early 1960s. So I know that, but at the same time, I think as we go into this process, we need to acknowledge the fact that we not only have a great city, but we have had a very good city government. We want to make it better. We need to make it better. I certainly think that as we confront the job of revising our city charter, my optimism shows, I think, in the fact that I'm one who rather welcomes the fact that we have two commissions. That doesn't seem to me, as it seems to some people, to be totally absurd. It doesn't seem to me, as it seems to some people, that it necessarily is counterproductive. We have in the Congress of the United States two houses, and they wrangle and they come to some kind of a conclusion about topics. On the state legislative level, we have the same kind of competition of ideas that goes on. And so I, for one, am going to watch with a great deal of interest as we go into this process. I do think that as we look at the charter, we need to try to clarify the relationship between the executive power on the one hand and the legislative power on the other hand. I think that deserves a lot of attention, and if you want to hear something specific for just a moment, I think you should seriously consider writing a charter that requires the mayor to be the presiding officer of the council. Away from specifics, though, my guess is that probably the relationship that we need to work hardest on as we rewrite our charter is the relationship between central authority on the one hand and the local authority on the other hand. I don't feel that we should be disturbed by the fact that too much centralization presents problems and too much decentralization presents problems. If we look at the governance of large corporations, you find that you cannot simply say they are centralized or they are decentralized. The question is, what need we centralize and what need we decentralize? I think we should look forward to a charter that will provide something like community boards. And as we provide for community boards, I must say it makes me nervous. I sat on the Board of Zoning Appeals for 11 years, and if the decisions with regard to zoning matters had been left up simply to the neighbors, we would find it impossible to ever find a location for even a fire station, because everybody wants a fire station 3 minutes away. Nobody wants a fire station within 30 seconds away. And the plight of the people who must live close to airports, close to other public facilities that serve us all is a plight that can't simply be left up to the neighborhoods. At the same time, the idea of neighborhood council is such a good one, I think, that one of the things you should consider is that we have neighborhood councils and that they have a budget and they be able to undertake projects and be able to make some decisions for themselves. I have a broad vision, and that's what I'm offering tonight, and that is, I believe that we should strive with the idea in mind that we want to have a great city, but with the feel of a small town. And if we can achieve those two complementary purposes, we will have done a great deal. This is a wonderful historic opportunity. We've been waiting for so long, so many decades, for this chance. We mustn't let it slip away. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. One thing questions on, yes. Ed Edelman.
Yeah, I'm not clear, Dr. Campbell, when you indicated that you felt the mayor should be the presiding officer of the council, what would that do? Wouldn't that take away from his ability to govern as an executive if you make him part of the legislature?
Yeah, many of the larger cities in the country do have the mayor as a presiding officer, and my understanding is that from day to day, the council has the equivalent of the president of the council now that presides, but the mayor does have the ability to come in and preside, and it's a way of attempting to bring the mayor and his or her thinking together with the thinking of the council, so that they operate not from opposite corners of the city council, the city hall, but rather operate within the same arena.
I neglected to do two things. One, I wanted to remind all of you who do want to speak to fill out these cards that are in the back of the room, and any of the staff members, Kevin Scott or George Wolfberg or Karen, can make sure you get those. So anybody who wants to speak, and please give them to, or Jason, who's walking right now towards one card, so that we can get those. Secondly, we're trying to suggest that speakers try to stay under 5 minutes so we can get other speakers up here who wants to speak. That would not include time for questions, which would be added to that. The next person we have is Fred Gaines. Fred is a partner and chair of Resnick and Resnick's Land Use Department. He has a master's degree in public policy from the Kennedy School of Government. And I don't know, Fred, if you're speaking for VICA tonight or on your own, but I know that you were representing some other organizations as well. But if you would identify yourself further, since I know you well, but others do not.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The chairman and his partners gave me my first job as a lawyer, for which I'm very thankful.
Good to see you've done well, Fred.
Well, I'm glad you feel that way. Some of the people here don't always appreciate everything I do, but we seem to still be friendly. I'm here today. I was asked to sort of give a perspective of someone who on a regular basis has to do business with the city and to talk about some of those issues. I am the vice chair of VICA. I'm the president-elect of the San Fernando Valley Bar Association, so I'm involved in a wide range of activities in the Valley, and thank you very much for having your hearing in the Valley. We appreciate that very much. On Saturday, I was at the barber. I got a haircut. Did a nice job. And he was asking me, so how's it going in the practice? And I said, fine. And he said, what are you doing? And I said, I have a new client, a company that runs 20 lube centers. They're called Snappy Lube. They're like a Jiffy Lube type center in Northern California, very successful company. And they want to open some stores in Southern California, and I'm helping them get permits to open these stores. And the barber says to me, well, why would they need an attorney to do that? And the answer is pretty simple. If I just give you a couple of examples of the first two applications we made in the city of Los Angeles to open these lube centers. One was in Sherman Oaks and involved, to put a lube center on a spot that was formerly a gas station site, involved both a conditional use permit and an exception to the Ventura Boulevard specific plan. Now, you can make those applications. You can pay the fee, which is close to 10 grand just to make the application to the city, and then they go off on different processes. One goes to the Board of Zoning Appeals, one goes to the City Planning Commission, and they meet back up later on at the City Council. Now try to explain that to a client as to the reason for that your lube center, your 2,000 square foot lube center has to go to two separate commissions for two separate approvals. For the Woodland Hills site, we had a different problem. I read the code and talked to the people at the planning office here in Van Nuys and decided all we needed was a conditional use permit. So we made the application and it went off, and about 15, 20 days later, the zoning administrator's office determines it also needs a variance, and then we had an argument about that. But rather than argue, we go ahead and make the variance application. Turns out that it's approved, and the neighbors appeal that we don't need a variance. They have no problem with the project, but they disagree with the zoning administrator that we need a variance, and we had to have an additional hearing about whether or not we should get a variance on that particular site, all to approve a project that everyone already said is okay. This is a 60, 90, 180-day delay for someone who wants to employ 10 people, open a new business in the city of Los Angeles. And then, of course, you got to explain to the client, and at the bottom line is, if the council person in your district doesn't like it, it's not going to get approved. Whether the zoning administrator says it's okay and the neighbors say it's okay, if that one person, the council person from that district, says that it's not going to be approved, then you're most likely not going to get approved. These are the types of issues that people have to deal with when they want to do business with the city. I could tell you the story of Mrs. Bahat, who lives up in the Crestwood Hills area, who had a neighbor who didn't like some of the things she was doing, and he went and filed 8 separate appeals over a period of 2 years of various issues, some dating back to the original building permit on her house from 1940, because the Building and Safety Department has no statute of limitations on when you can appeal whether an error was made. So he was claiming an error was made in 1940 when the building permit was issued. I don't have to tell you about just my clients in my law practice. I grew up in this area and used the Studio City Branch Library. That was the library I used as a kid. And a few years ago, the lot next door to it, which had been a gas station, went out of business. And we thought, gee, if we could get the city to buy this lot, then someday we can expand the Studio City Library. We don't have the money for it now, but someday we could expand into that lot. Well, that took 6 years of battling departments, of trying to find the money. Some of the money came from transportation, some came from Park and Rec, and this department didn't want to give it up, and it took 2 lawyers, myself and my friend Jerry Kurland, one of my buddies I grew up with, who happens to be a lawyer as well, to work that through the process. Or I could tell you about the Encino Chamber of Commerce, who back in the 1950s donated a building and piece of property on Balboa Boulevard. You may have seen it on Balboa, just south of Ventura. And they built this building as a community building, and they donated it to the city for the Park and Recs Department. And in it, they had a little office for the Encino Chamber of Commerce. Well, the Encino Chamber of Commerce has grown. It was 70 members then. It's 400 members now. And they wanted to add on to their office in a little space that literally was between the building and the alley. Well, now that it belonged to the City Department of Rec and Parks, it could only be used for rec and park purposes. And we fought, despite the fact the council member wanted it in this case, we fought the city attorney, we fought the Rec and Parks Department, and finally, if you go by there now, they're building it. But again, a 4-year process to add 1,000 square feet to the Encino Chamber of Commerce office on property and in a building that they gave to the city for that purpose. So these are some of the things you have to deal with when you're doing business with the city of Los Angeles. And as a business person, I hope that the commission, as it goes through its hearings, considers that what people want in terms of service. They're looking for consistency and predictability. They're looking for a clear process. Have whatever process you want, but just let us know what it is in advance. Set some timelines. It's reasonable for someone who wants to do a project to know that in 90 days, the process goes from start to finish. And have some customer service orientation. And I don't know how you do that, but you have to have some accountability and some response. You call my office and someone will call you back. You call the city, many of the city departments, and you don't always get a call back. And sometimes it takes many, many calls. And that's not what people are used to and what's acceptable in the city. As a lawyer, and I know I can see a few lawyers on the commission, I ask you to consider some legal principles to apply. Have some clear venue. Where do you go if you need a certain thing? In some cases, under this current city charter, you can go to more than one place or have to go to more than one place. Set a venue for issues. Establish standing. Do you know that if, let's say the sports arena project goes forward and they need a conditional use permit and everyone's happy. If my Aunt Minnie flies in from Chicago, goes down to City Hall, she can file an appeal of a decision on the conditional use permit for the sports arena, get on the plane and fly back. And you can't withdraw the appeal after it's done because the city will tell you, well, if you didn't appeal, maybe someone else would have appealed. So even if you go and resolve the issue with the person who's appealed, they're going to make you go to a hearing an extra 90 days onto your process. There's no standing. And other cities have standing. They say an appeal can be filed if you live within a certain area or at least if you're a resident of the city. No requirement in the city of Los Angeles. You should have some statute of limitations. there should be a time period in which something could be brought back up. If your permit for your house was issued in 1940, 1997 is too late for someone to say, you know, they made an error back there. And maybe there should be some issues of res judicata. You know, if you bring one appeal, you bring all your issues. You shouldn't be subject to a series of issues, one after another. You might want to think about ex parte communications. That's a touchy issue. What is appropriate when you have people making these kinds of, in many cases, legalistic decisions, and some people are lobbying and others are not. And you might consider, as some jurisdictions have gone to, this issue of sworn testimony. Right now, people come to a hearing, they get up and say whatever they want. When I go to the Board of Supervisors, I raise my hand at the beginning of the hearing and swear I'm going to tell the truth. You don't do that in the city of LA, and no one's held accountable for what they say.
Let me, Fred, hold you accountable for time.
And where am I on time? I have 15 seconds
If
left.
you could wrap up, thanks.
Okay. I ask you to look at the San Diego model. San Diego set up 5 types of processes for actions by the city. One that stops with the local hearing officer up to number 5, which goes all the way to the council. And everything they do, they assign it a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's only 5 processes for actions by the city. It's something you might want to look at. And of course, you need to define the roles of the city attorney, of the zoning administrator, look to enforcement, because enforcement is a big problem in these areas, and take possibly a lead from the mayor's business teams. He set up these business teams, and what they've done in some cases is act as ombudsmen. They've brought everyone together in a room to say, okay, here's all the departments you got to deal with it at once, rather than making you traipse around the city from department to department. And I think there may be a model there that could be in place in the charter. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred Gaines. If you have anything in writing that you want to present to us in terms of recommendations, please do, and I make that a request of all the speakers. If you've got some material that you want to either leave with us or give us later, we'd be happy to accept it. Our next speaker is Richard Close, who is co-chair of Valley Vote, partner in the law firm of Shapiro, Rosenfeld, and Close. Richard Close.
Thank you. Also speaking here as president of the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association. Members of the commission, you have perhaps an impossible task. You're being asked to spend probably 2 years of work preparing a charter to go before the city council and then before the voters. A lot of people feel that you don't have flexibility because if you put in the wrong provisions, the city council will strike them out and put something quite different on the ballot. Also, you have another commission that is being set up now by the voters. You may have an impossible task, but it's a task that needs to be done. You're spending the time because you realize a couple things. Number one, you realize that this city is declining. You realize that something must be done to revamp the charter to make it a better charter. And you realize that unless something is done, we're going to see future decline. What is the decline? What we've seen, for instance, in the Valley, businesses moving out. We're seeing residents move out. Our previous speaker, Fred Gaines, was an active member and resident of Sherman Oaks. He doesn't live in Los Angeles anymore. He exercised his right and moved to, I guess, Calabasas. So the good people, the people that are active, are moving out. It's very easy for people to move, and unless we take some action, that's what will continue to happen. We must restructure the city charter to accomplish 3 goals. The charter must be responsive, more efficient, and more effective. Unless those goals are accomplished, responsive, efficient, and effective, the city will continue to decline as people move to Burbank, to Calabasas, to South Bay, wherever. A couple suggestions. We need to have a mayor that is more than a ribbon cutter, more than a person who has an ability to jawbone and to veto. We must make the mayor the chief executive officer of the city, responsible to every resident of the city. We must restructure the city council. It should be a legislative body, not a combination of a legislative and administrative body. We cannot have 15 chiefs running this city. Third, we need to expand the city council to at least 30 members. Even with 30 members, this would mean that one city council member would represent 130,000 residents. The current situation of 260,000 residents per council member is not defendable, it doesn't work, and it needs to be changed. We must create elected administrative bodies in each community. For instance, the Sherman Oaks community, the Woodland Hills community, etc. These boards must have the power to make local planning decisions and have discretion on allocating a certain amount of funds within their community. They are the best people to decide whether there should be extra funding for security, whether it should be for road resurfacing, expanding a library, new parking structure. We must go back to the models that we see in Burbank, Glendale, right over here in the city of San Fernando, where if the residents have a problem, they go down on a Tuesday night, they look in the eye of their city council member and their mayor and their the chief of police and say, here's our problem, here's our solution, and here's what needs to be done, and they get answers. Right now, people in this room go down to city council, they're given 1 minute. If they speak at the end of the meeting, the council members are having lunch, talking on the phone, is just not working. You people have to help us decide what is going to happen to Los Angeles. Will the city of Los Angeles rebound, or will it continue to decline? Will the San Fernando Valley and other areas of the city become separate cities, separate and apart from the city of Los Angeles? Or will Los Angeles respond and your commission respond and make this a better city? I saw it, and a number of people in this room saw it in the mid-1970s with property tax, large increases in property taxes. Everyone said, this is outrageous. Property taxes were doubling and tripling. The legislature fumbled the ball. Governor Jerry Brown fumbled. The Board of Supervisors never really was able to come up with a solution. The solution was Howard Jarvis and Proposition 13. I was part of it. A number of people here were part of that. Was it the perfect solution? No. But it was the only solution that could be enacted because our elected officials refused to respond. When we look back 5, 10 years from now, when the city of Los Angeles is broken up into 10 different pieces, will each of you look back upon tonight and your service here in this commission and say, I wish I could have done something to have kept Los Angeles together. I had the opportunity, and ladies and gentlemen, I ask you, take this opportunity, turn Los Angeles around. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've received a note. Paula Boland has joined us, elected Commissioner Paula Boland and former State Assemblywoman. Thank you for joining us. And let me remind you again, those of you who want to speak, please get the cards that are in the back from one of the staff members, and then staff could bring them up here. Our next speaker is Alexandra Caden, who has been a professor of School of Public Policy and Social Research at UCLA, Los Angeles Fellow of the UCLA Forum, a graduate Phi Beta Kappa from Columbia in American History, and received her PhD from Harvard in Political Science. She is a frequent contributor to the Los Angeles Times on city government and other issues, and welcome, Alexandra Caden.
Thank you. What I'm going to speak about, I'm going to try to make the 5-minute mark, is the broader issues behind charter reform, what's driving it. I think what you're going to hear a lot of tonight, particularly, is the frustration. And I think that the frustration comes from many different reasons. They often have to do with particular examples of people's lives, but I think there are underlying issues before them. And what I would urge this commission and the elected commission to do is to get behind what the frustration is. Another broad issue is that there are a lot of changes in society since the charter was voted in 1925. And the third one that I want to address is the inability of city government to respond to demands because of financial constraints, which I think is probably the biggest issue, a complex decision-making structure within city government, which you've already heard about, and with other levels of government, some of which didn't even exist when the charter was written, and the absence of mechanisms for consensus building in the city. We are now a very complex, diverse society, and perhaps the most diverse city in the world. But the structure was written when Los Angeles was the most white Anglo-Saxon Protestant middle-class city in the world. There ought to be consequences to that difference. I don't know what they are, but it seems to me it's the role of the commissions to pursue exploring what those differences are. We have weakened or absent mediating institutions that used to exist in the city. There is, for instance, we now are predominantly an immigrant community, but the last time American cities faced immigration, there were local parties to help incorporate them into the political structure. We don't have that today. We don't have any mechanism to incorporate new groups into the city. There's a decline in membership in civic associations all over the world. The consequence of that is that people don't act in groups, and they don't feel because of that they can make a difference. That has added to the sense of lack of confidence in our institutions in general. We're now a small business economy. 80% of the city is small business. That means that we don't have the corporate leaders who used to be able to devote a lot of their resources. We still have corporate leaders, but they're corporate heads of multinational corporations. Most of them don't do business in the city. It's not that they don't care, they don't have a responsibility, but it's not quite the same thing. What are the consequences of having 80% of small business? What does that mean in terms of the kinds of resources that people can bring to the city? What does the city have to bring to them? That's, again, an issue that I think that commissions need to explore. The biggest problem of all is financial. If we had resources, we could provide services, but we don't. And we're more likely to be strapped in the future, even with the economy picking up, because the city is the last level that's going to see a turnaround from economic advantages. So what have we done because we don't have the resources? We cut staff, but the city has grown. We centralize, but we're asking for people, for departments to be available at the neighborhood level. And we fight with each other over what there is. And so this year we've seen several battles in the city council between the Valley and downtown and south and east Los Angeles. Some of this is due to causes entirely that's the centralization going on. Some of this is due entirely to causes beyond the city's capacity to control. A lot of it has to do with federal taxation, with state regulation, with the state's desire a couple of years ago to balance its budget by taking off the property tax that would have returned to the county and then to the city. Some of it has to do with banking decisions about investment, about benefiting suburbs as opposed to benefiting urban areas. But some of it is within our control. What the commissions have to do is explore what is possible for the city to control in terms of its own financing, and to set a path for itself to gain control. This is going to be particularly troublesome, I think, as deregulation hits in the electric power industry. And one of the main cash cows of the city, the Department of Water and Power, has to seriously draw back on its capacity to subsidize the ratepayers. The city has a very complex decision process, which you've heard about. It's designed to disperse authority. That's what the progressive authors of the charter wanted to do. They were afraid of too much power. We have complex standard operating procedures designed to be, which is true of all government. It's designed to be fair and to protect city employees from charges of not being fair. But the consequence of that over time is that they become inflexible. We need to protect the civil service, but we need to make it flexible. We need to consider whether or not the commissions are the best way to go. There are other models of government, but commissions work somewhat against coordination in terms of, if you wanted, one of the models, for instance, would be an executive with a cabinet. Well, you don't get a cabinet if you've got 5 people at the head of each department. If one of the ways we're talking about of expanding participation is neighborhood councils, maybe commissions are another way to go. It's something the charter commissions need to consider. And what are we going to do to bring about consensus in the city? The media doesn't help. Speaking as a sometime representative of the media, a participant in the media, it used to be that local television coverage, for instance, followed the news by what the paper of the day wrote was the important news. That's not the case today. Local television news is controlled by the technology. And since we now have the technology not only to follow car chases, but to follow crimes as they happen, that's what we get. We get personal tragedy as news. That affects how we view the city. The Times thinks of itself as it is as a national paper. When the Herald Examiner died, it stopped really focusing on the city very much. Not that Hugo Martin doesn't try, but his editors don't give him a lot of space. The Daily News does a much better job of covering the city, but it covers principally the valley. There are lots of newspapers in the city. I write for some of them. But we don't speak to each other through the newspapers because they're in different languages, and they go to different communities. The neighborhood councils could be a way, and there's a lot of talk, particularly for the candidates for the elected commission, talk about neighborhood councils, and I think partly being driven by the newspapers, including, I might add, the LA Weekly. And I think they're going a little too far in a desire to gain local control. There's an inevitable tension between wanting a citywide voice and control over your own life. The commissions must look at that issue and must look at the possibilities of neighborhood councils, but beware of the limitations. Some of the concerns or the frustrations have nothing to do with the city, but have a lot to do with state law. And those aren't going to be changed. There's a limit to what neighborhood councils are going to be able to do, but there's a great deal that they might do. Frustration in general is related to lack of confidence is generally related to lack of knowledge. There was an article yesterday in the New York Times about that very issue, that people don't know how the city, any government operates, and because of that, they don't have confidence in it. This is a great opportunity, both for the commissions and for the city, to get to know what the city is about, how it functions, what we want to be, how we're going to get there. We keep talking about Los Angeles as a major city in the Pacific Rim in the 21st century. We don't have a single mechanism designed to figure out how to get us there. How are we going to do that? What does it mean? We are a city that has, with the diversity that we have, it's a tremendous strength. But California is known as being hostile to immigrants, at least in terms of 187 and 209. What do we need to do as a city to think as big as we can? And there's no other opportunity to do that beyond the Charter Commission, frankly. So I wish you good luck.
Thank you, Sandra. Charlie Mims is another elected commission candidate who has joined us. Charlie, thank you for coming. I haven't seen you myself. There you are. Robert Scott has been involved with the Valley and Valley business and activities for a long time. He is a recipient of the Daily News Mendenhall Man of the Year Award, and many of you in the audience know of his activities. He is our next speaker, Robert Scott. Have I seen him? Or maybe not. All right, we'll come back to Robert Scott. Hernani Bernardi has represented the city, the Valley, for many, many years before he left the city council. And Councilman, we're pleased to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ed, the cities that have mayor with the city council also have city managers, but that's beside the point. I came here hoping to hear somebody spell out what it is. What is it that the mayor or somebody can't do in the city that the charter prevents him from doing? Where is it in the charter that it says there's a conflict between the mayor and the city council? Is there really a legal conflict, or is it just personalities, or is it just the ego that's running away with what happens in City Hall and in the mayor's chambers. But I'm serious when I say the newspapers keep publishing, making all of this noise about wanting all these neighborhood councils. And good Lord, I think maybe we have too many members of the council now. They have 5 supervisors who represent 10 million people. And yet you have people come up here and you sound as though they're going to need to take care of the city's problems, just have another 40 or 50 more councilmen. And I assure you, if you allow them to meet more than 1 hour a day, 1 day a week, and only 1 hour a day, you're only going to have that many more problems. But that is somebody else. But being serious, I think it's unfortunate that we have now degenerated, the city has, into a situation where we've got 2 commissions, 2 groups of people like yourself, dedicated people who are willing to serve, and yet find out that they're involved in a very horrible personal conflict. And this, in essence, is what it amounts to. It's the ego situation that is creating all of this problem. But I hope that this commission and the other commission would decide one day to go before television or go before the public like you are here. And the reason why we need charter change is because the mayor can't do this, the city council can do this, the city council can't do that, and the mayor can't do that. And that, until we hear that, I don't know why you're even talking about a charter. I don't know what the charter is going to do, because you're going to hear the same arguments 5 or 10 years from now about the city charter not being adequate, as you've heard in the past 50 years about different charters and about how we need to change the charter in order to get some success. Have you looked at the fact maybe it's the people we elect and how they interpret the charter that creates the problem for us? But then you have to look at another aspect. We have all the news media and a lot of the activists screaming about what needs to be done. And yet, when you look at the elections, and the members of the city council, including me, keep getting reelected time and time after again by their bosses, does that indicate that there isn't such a problem? Their bosses are satisfied with their electors, and it's only just a few people, a few of the activists who have a personal interest in what happens, who are making all this noise about the government being such a mess. So I'm going to get back. Then again, we complain about the people, we complain about what's going in City Hall, yet overwhelmingly, even though the voters don't turn out, the voters by an overwhelming majority apparently put a stamp on the elected officials we have. So there can't be too much wrong with the city charter. But just in one brief message here, I had hoped that when I came here, that you would be explaining the charter that you, a temporary charter you had drafted, presented to us so that we could then present our ideas, to try to convince you that we have better ideas than you have. I'm sure that you people, with your substantial budget and with your substantial people that you have to work with you, can do a much better job of at least a temporary charter amendment than just asking for people who most of them don't have the slightest idea of how their government operates, and too many of them are not even interested in how their government operates. So I hope that one day, somewhere along the line, we'll see what you think ought to be done, so then we can address ourselves to that very, very basic problem. Until then, I'm sorry to say it, but you're just going from place to place, asking people, again, as I say, that don't have the knowledge that you ought to have by now, or you will have, or the staff people you have to advise you, so they may be here giving you a lot of advice. You just heard of a lobbyist up here. I don't know, did he spend 10 or 15 minutes trying to tell you how to fix the charter so that he can get his own change in the wrong place in one day. And I hope that's not what's going to result from this. But please, you're the people. Ed's gone through this, I don't know how many times, but you're the people that ought to be out here now telling us what you think ought to be done, and then ask us whether we support you or whether we oppose you. But I think that's the only way you're going to get things done. But with two commissions going at each other in the manner that they're starting to go at each other, it's going to make Los Angeles the laughing stock of the United States, of cities in the United States. You don't want that to happen. I don't want that to happen. So one of the big jobs that you've got is to see that this conflict doesn't exist and see that we can do something. If we need to amend the charter, certainly there's some changes need to be made, but not wholesale changes. And again, I appreciate what you're trying to do and the job that's been imposed on you, but I'm not very optimistic that it's going to happen, and at the end of all of this, the city's going to come out of it in a brighter climate with respect to the way it's viewed by other cities in the United States. God bless you, and thank you, and good luck.
Thank you. Let me add a little bit about our process. We intend, our hope is that over the next few months we're conducting our own research, our own interviews with public officials, as we announced in the mission statement that was on the screen, former officials, employees, people in the academic community, the public, and then to work on a draft charter that would then be publicly distributed for further comment and then further revision after hearing that comment. The next speaker we have is Bobby Fiedler.
Thank you very much, members of the Commission. I'm very pleased that you were willing to come out this evening, and hope that we can give you a little bit of insight into some of the issues that are important to the members of the community that are here. As you know, I was elected at large in the city of Los Angeles successfully in 12 out of 15 council districts. I have an intimate knowledge of the city of Los Angeles and the people who reside here. And it has always troubled me a great deal when we talk about our city, that we talk about it in the form of bricks and boards, which is what it is. It is a city of people. 126 languages are spoken in the schools. We have tremendous diversity here, and our purpose as a city, and certainly hopefully as a city charter commission, is to serve the interests of those people, not the interests of the city or the bureaucracy or the political members of the city, to try to analyze what their problems are and to come up with viable solutions in terms of today, 1990, not in terms of decades ago when this commission, when this charter was first devised. You have a tremendous amount of discontent within the city of Los Angeles. Don't let anybody try to fool you into believing that everybody is happy with the nature and the dynamics of the activity going on within the city. People feel very isolated. They feel ineffective. I've been involved in the secession movement for some time now and had a chance to talk to people all the way from San Pedro to Wilmington to Westchester to Venice to other areas of the city, South Central, and there is a great deal of sense of second-class citizenship throughout the city in almost any area that you go to. And you need to recognize that, because that is a reality, and it will affect the degree to which the charge that you have is effectively carried out. You must recognize that. I think that the people of this city are very concerned about fair share. They really feel shortchanged. I don't care whether it's the San Fernando Valley, South Central, San Pedro, East LA. Everybody feels as though they're not getting a fair share of the action. And very frankly, I was born and brought up in this area, and I believe that they have not gotten a fair share of the action. Most of it has gone downtown. Hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars have been invested in downtown infrastructure to the exclusion of resources in other areas of the city. I think that what you need to do is look at this issue from a budgetary standpoint. Money is the key to what happens in terms of equity for the people of this city. And I have a suggested idea as to how you might take a look at the budget and come up with a little bit different approach that will deal with the issue of equity. One is we need a general budget which deals with overhead and disaster or emergency service aid, your basic budget, your basic centralized budget as a component of it. You also need a council district budget. People throughout the city are entitled to a fair share of the resources available. And I believe that that should be used in such a way in conjunction with the council member of that area. And I'm not speaking to how many council members would be appropriate, but to the council member and a neighborhood council concept. If you simply formulate or permit the formulation of neighborhood councils without giving them any opportunity to have an impact on the budget, they're nothing more than paper tigers, and I can assure you the people of this city will recognize that. So think seriously about having them become economic partners with the council member that they elect to deal with the special problems that are unique to their area. You cannot ask somebody representing South Central Los Angeles to really understand the dynamics in East LA. And you can't do that in other areas of the city. You need the intimacy of what goes on in each neighborhood, in each community, to help resolve the specific problems. You need also a third component of the budget. You need a third component which gives the mayor a resource budget. A budget where he can go out with the special problems that he feels are unique from throughout the city in an overview. Give him a chance to have some not only recognition, but some authority over some funds which he doesn't have to go to war with the city council over, because I agree thoroughly with Hernani Bernardi. The personalities are such of the people involved in politics that you will never have consensus in such a way that will really be to the broad base of the interests of the people of our city or any other city. So you need to have some level of autonomy, and I think the mayor is entitled to some of that. Excessive taxation. The people of this city are not very well heeled. There may be a few who are better off than others, but most of them are barely making it. I don't care what part of the city you go to. People are holding on by their fingernails. If they're lucky, they're paying their basic bills, but most of them are going in the hole. And all you have to do is take a look at the borrowing being done in the city of Los Angeles by people in terms of using their credit cards, taking money out of their homes, depleting their basic resources in terms of checking accounts and savings accounts. We don't have much money in this city. We are a city of people who are really working very hard and working on the edge. The taxation level of this city must be kept to the lowest possible level with the highest level of service available and staying out of a series of issues. I don't care whether it's Sister City or other social issues that people like to get involved in because they make headlines. That has nothing to do with providing basic services to people of this city and doing it well and doing it to everybody, because we're all entitled to it. The bonding system, I am just recently left the Community Redevelopment Agency as a commissioner. The bonding system in this city is a disaster. CRA is extrapolating out of the basic tax structure of this city enormous amounts of money, which ought to be going to the general fund and distributed for the general good. I understand the basic concept of trying to go into areas and resolve problems. That isn't what's happening. During the term that I was there, one of the most needy areas is the Watts area. They spent a grand total, after all the things that have happened in that area, of $17 million for a cultural center. The people in those communities, if you're going to deplete the basic resources out of our tax base, are entitled to something real, something substantive, and not simply because a political structure happens to be able to draw money to downtown, to deny the rest of the city, those with the lowest level of political competence, to get their fair share of the resources. We're not doing a good and fair job. I've been involved in a little issue involving a beer and wine permit, and I took a look at a recent article and showed that the company with whom I was dealing had $300,000 in lobbying funds that was going to the city council in various ways. Those kinds of dollars, whether it's on a special issue of this kind or trying to get money for somebody who's trying to develop a building downtown, those kind of dollars are simply too tempting. So maybe you might want to consider the possibility of dealing with conflict of interest issues. The Los Angeles School Board, upon which I served for some time, has an excellent conflict of interest policy wherein you cannot vote on issues if you have a direct economic connection to them. There's lots of other things I could say, and I know that your time is limited, but I wanted to share some of these thoughts with you and hope that you'll take them into consideration. And most importantly is realize people of this city are entitled to a piece of the action, a fair piece of the action, not because they can knock on the door downtown or because they can make political contributions, but because they live here, they contribute here, they're a part of our community, and there are responsibilities as a city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fiedler. I want to recognize Councilwoman Laura Chick, who arrived just a few minutes ago. Thank you for joining us. And elected Charter Commissioner Castaneda. We've got some other folks here as well. Marcos Castaneda. Dennis Zine from the 3rd Councilmatic District is here, I believe. Dennis, are you still here? In the hall. In the hall. The campaign is over, Dennis. Now, I want to call next on James Stewart, United Chambers of the San Fernando Valley. James Stewart, are you still here? Yes.
Mr. President and Commissioners, thank you for being here this evening. There is a whole list of issues that need to be addressed. There is a couple I would like to deal with this evening. The first is the hearings themselves. You have a number scheduled. It's not enough. This first hearing in the Valley, we're honored that the first one is here. However, we'd like the last one to be here as well. We want the opportunity to react to what everybody else has said, to what proposals you make. That is critical to the success of this venture and to the public support. Another major issue is redistricting of the City Council. This is the basis of how this city operates. Currently, or rather in the 1992 redistricting, if you attended as many of the hearings as I did, you heard a single voice throughout this city, from Woodland Hills to San Pedro, from East LA to the borders of Santa Monica, keep our communities together. What did the City Council not do when they redistricted? They did not keep our communities together. Of the 25 recognized communities in the San Fernando Valley, there are only five that are wholly within a single council district. And some areas, such as Van Nuys, have 4 council districts within their boundaries. How are we to get anything done if we have to go to all these different people? And that doesn't even talk about the division between Mulholland and the west side and the valley. Those of us over here in Sherman Oaks and Van Nuys have not very much in common with the folks in Westwood, and yet we are represented by the same person. A district divided this way cannot accomplish anything. The process of redistricting must create contiguous, compact districts that conform to something resembling regular geometry, and that keep these communities together so that the whole community can attack its problems with a single person, not having to get 4 or 5 council people who each have a different agenda to agree on what needs to be done. We need to promote this community involvement. The community councils you've heard about tonight, in some ways they're a very good idea. They may help with this redistricting process, but they need to have the limitations so that those unwelcome things can get cited as well. But they need to be involved in the redistricting. We need to remove the incumbency protection provision, which says you can't draw a council person out of their district. That, along with the Voting Rights Act, is the excuses that are used for gerrymandering. And that politicizes this process, and we must depoliticize this process. Whether that is a citizens commission that is appointed or elected, or whether it's a court-appointed group that makes this decision and brings this process out, we must keep the communities together, we must empower those communities to act, and we must take the power base away from the elected officials. This is the redistricting process is the elected officials of this city saying, now how can I get more power? Those people in power stay in power, those people with less power get their power reduced, and all in all, everybody suffers. Depoliticize this process, remove the incumbency protection provision, and keep our communities together in the redistricting process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Also here is elected Commissioner Ann Finn. I want to recognize Ann. If she's still here. She was here a moment ago. She may be out in the hallway. On the side in the hallway. Next speaker is Harry Coleman, Valley Vote Board and President North Hills Council.
I too want to recognize this commission and welcome you here to the Valley. We hope we're able to give you some input that you can take back with you. I was going to speak on a variety of subjects, most of which have already been covered, so I'll just cover a couple things briefly. First of all, I'm not quite clear. You do have a chairman. Is that correct?
Yes.
And do you have chairmans of these various study groups?
Let me let you finish your remarks, and I'll write down the questions you've got and cover them if you like.
I'll need to know if you have a chairman of the institution study group. Is this a subject that you're already discussing? I'm specifically talking about the reorganization of the government.
Yes. Each of the study groups has a leader. The study groups will not be making recommendations as a committee might of a council. Their job is going to be to focus on the issues and describe and characterize the alternatives, learn about those issues, describe the alternatives to the full commission. The leaders of the three study groups, the participation study group is led by Doris Nelson. The institutions study group is headed by Joe Mandel. And the management study group is headed by Luann Boylan.
When on Joe's study with the institution study group, when might we expect some preliminary ideas about the reforming of the government? Basically, the mayor, is it going to be strong mayor, weak mayor? The city council, are we going to have extra councilmen? How will they be divided up? The mapping and remapping and so forth. Are those going to be a priority of this commission?
They're certainly, Mr. Coleman, a part of the process. Determining how they're going to come out now, I can't tell you. But we're probably going to be meeting in those study groups over the next few months, and it will be toward the end of that period of time that we'll see those alternatives start to take shape, and the commission itself starting to look at those things. Even through, at the end of that process, it's the intention of the commission at this point in time to then release to the public its feelings on those alternatives and what it's choosing to put forward as the best ideas that it can, and then get further comment from the public at that time. But during that process, you can participate throughout that process.
Yeah, I might offer a suggestion that you might step that up a little bit. In a way, you're in competition. We have another Charter Reform Commission, which is being formed now. This Charter Reform Commission, you've got secession itself, and so forth. And all of us are gathering information quite rapidly and trying to put together some ideas and so forth. We might even share some of that information with you as things go along. As I said, I was going to cover a variety of things here today, but I think I'd like to speak on one thing and just drop the other subjects. And it happens to be a subject that's been very popular in the press the last 4 days. It involves the North Hill story, specifically over on Orion Street. Most of you have been reading the Los Angeles Times, and there's been quite a bit said about the operation on Orion Street and the North Hills project. I head up that project. I started it some 3.5 years ago as a civilian, president of the Coordinating Council. I spent 3.5 years fighting for resources to get something done in there while kids are dying. It's been a long, hard battle. I've had to fight my own government in many cases, to get the resources that are necessary to get the job done. How long did it take us really to clean up Orion Street? Not long. We did it in about 6 months, once we had the resources. And if we keep those resources intact there, they won't have any problems in the future. But should I really have to do that as a civilian, not paid, to go out and form a task force? Or isn't this a job of the city? You can see the frustration on the part of the San Fernando Valley, the people in the San Fernando Valley that feel shortchanged. We had to fight for those resources, mainly from the LAPD, to get our fair share of the Los Angeles Police Department resources and take away from other sections of the city. This is what has led a lot of us, and some of the people in here, this room have already mentioned it, to the verge of secession. This is why you're here today. Because we have been talking about secession, and we're very serious about it. And we will be going forward with it. We don't believe that charter reform will work. You must change our minds and turn that around and show us a form of government that will correct the illnesses that we have and be equitable for all the areas of Los Angeles, not just the San Fernando Valley. I don't know how to emphasize that strongly enough. It's if you hope to save the city and keep it intact, you must consider these things. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Leonard Shapiro. Leonard.
My name is Leonard Shapiro. For those that don't know me, I'm a gadfly, and I've attended about 60 of your meetings already, and I'm glad to see you finally holding a public one. The main reason you're here, and I wish there were more people out here, because I only counted about 75, 80 in the room. Last night I was at the meeting of a police commission. They had about 170. Some way the word did not get out that you were having this here, because I know there's a lot of interest in the idea of what is this charter reform all about and where's it going. And there's always been a lot of interest. Got these clippings that date back to 1991, and it shows, including one that was just recently put out by a fellow named James Ingram, where they talk about charter reform that was initiated in 1889, and then in 1898, and then appointed charter revision commissions have recommended various reforms since 1902, 1906, 1909, 1911, and 1913. And I don't see any of that material here. I'd like to know what was impelling all these people to do all this talk about charter reform, and what happened after 1925 when they finally made a new charter. In 34 and in 41 and in 70 and 71, there was also attempts made to draw a new charter. And back on this other article I had, it goes back into the history of how the charter was originally set up. And I think it's interesting history that everybody on this commission should really know thoroughly. There's no question about it. Everybody talks about this is a weak mayor, strong council form of government, and they don't know the type of governments they're talking about. There's originally 3 types of government that was set up in this country. And one was the commission form of government, and one was like the strong mayor, and one was a strong council. They got rid of the strong mayor and the strong council in L.A. because there was too much corruption and too much graft and too much thievery going on. And they decided to diffuse their power, and they did this by appointing a commission form of government. Commission means commissions that are appointed for definite periods of time, usually 5 years, and in staggered terms, and nobody can remove them except for cause. Today, the commission form of government has been completely eradicated. And you have every time a commissioner does something that the mayor doesn't like, immediately the call goes out for the resignation, and usually in every case, except for our fire department, the resignation is coming quickly. Therefore, everybody gets to know what the score is, and the score is you please the mayor or you're out. And that's not what was intended by the charter. The charter was to have an all-power commission form of government, which we have now, where the commissions, when they're appointed, they're the ones that run the departments. They don't go to the city council. They don't go to the mayor to ask him if, ands, and buts. They run it. And that's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way it's set up. And that's the way it should be continued as far as I'm concerned. I think a commission form of government, properly handled, is a good form of government. But anybody who starts talking about the weak mayor form of government, this is not a weak mayor system. Because right now the council took upon itself with the charter amendment to give themselves the right of oversight on every single department. They Prop 5 it, and right away they can reverse any decision that's made. That further erodes the power that these commissions are supposed to, the all-powerful commissions are supposed to have. And between the mayor eroding it and the city council eroding this power, we really don't have it. And if we don't have it, maybe quite possibly the Charter Commission, Reform Commission, should say, okay, let's do away with it. But why were you set up in the first place? Why was the Reform Commission set up? Let me tell you, it was set up as an election gag. There was too much talk about San Fernando Valley seceding. They didn't like it. Because when a vote came up in the city council, all of a sudden, Rudy Savornich voted with the Valley on the secession issue. And he's from San Pedro. And then there's people talking about Venice, and in Westchester, and in various other places, even right in the Valley. Too much talk was out. Mayor Reardon and a lot of other people that were involved said, let's stop this talk of secession. Let's give them charter revision, and charter revision will make them stop thinking about secession, and we'll be one great big city one more time. That's what you got to remember. That's the main point that was set in. Doesn't mean you have to follow those orders, but that's why it was set up there. We don't always have the right way to go, but you got to remember that in the city of L.A., we had a riot in 1965, Watts riot. We had something that they say was a civil unrest in 1992. And when things like this happen, you know that there's frustration, which you talked about. You know there's alienation. You know there's hostility. You know there's hatred. And this is still there. Nobody is doing anything to eliminate it. And as long as this hostility and alienation exists, we have the same potential to have things occur that occurred in 1992 and 1965. Only each time it gets worse. You cannot afford to have a city where there's so much alienation and frustration among the people. You got to get direct responsibility. You have to come out with a system that makes sure that the council and the mayor are responsive. I told you this before. There should be an open door in the mayor's office. One day in a month, anybody who wants to see the mayor should have the right to see him. Tom Bradley had this. Sam Yorty had this. I don't know why it can't be put in the charter. Reardon doesn't like it. But it should be put in the charter that he must have it. One day is an open door. Anybody wants to beef about anything, come in and see the mayor. And the same thing could apply to each council person. Because if you get people who do this, then you don't have to have 50, 60 council people. I think as it stands right now, I'm in favor of matching New York and matching Detroit and Chicago with 30, 40, and 50, despite what Ernie Bernardi said. But he's right on one aspect of that it depends on who you got in there. You get good people in there, yes, 5 can do the job, 15 can do the job. But how do you get good people in there? I don't know how you get good people in there, but the point is you want to make them responsive and you want to make them representative, and if they are representative responsive, then practically any form of charter is good enough. But the point is, do what you can. As far as I'm concerned, there's no reason why you shouldn't learn from history and shouldn't learn from all the efforts of all the people in the last 100 years who tried to give us a government and a charter that we can live by. And when we get that, we can have good, responsive government. I've been working as a columnist and as a publisher of a newspaper for the past 12, 15 years, trying to get responsive government. I think it's highly important. Our children need it. We need it. Our grandchildren need this. And if we do the job that we're supposed to be done, we can easily get it. I don't think it's out of range of this commission. Whether you have one commission or 2 commissions, doesn't matter if you do the right thing. The point is, remember what's good in the charter. It doesn't have to be changed. Change what has to be changed, and make sure that you end up with a responsive government. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shapiro. I may have neglected to recognize Charlie Mims, who is a commission candidate also here. I see him.
Thank you. That's the second time.
Okay, well, you can pay me later, Charlie. All right. And Councilwoman Chick, I want to make sure that I didn't overlook you if you wanted to make a comment to the group.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm actually here to listen, to get educated along with you about the concerns and some of the ideas our citizens have. But just to play off something that Mr. Shapiro just said, I'm hoping in your work that you also take a look at the commission form of government itself, and that perhaps look at what once made an enormous amount of sense and was very relevant and worked very well for our city decades ago is perhaps outdated. One of my concerns is the amount of responsibility and jurisdiction and decision-making that some of our commissioners and commissions, especially at the proprietary departments, have resting on their shoulders as citizen part-time volunteers. I don't have specific views that it's good or it's bad, but I am suggesting that it's a part of our current form of government that I think needs some scrutiny. Other than that, I just want to thank all of you for the hard work that you've been doing and you are going to do, for being here tonight, and to offer my ongoing support and assistance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Our next speaker is Ross Hopkins.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to say a few words before the Commission. My name is Ross Hopkins. I'm a public affairs consultant in the San Fernando Valley, and I'm currently chairman of the United Chambers of Commerce Government Affairs Committee. And I personally and the United Chambers of Commerce are committed to working and to assisting both charter reform commissions in their efforts over the next couple of years. The comments tonight are mine, unless otherwise specifically noted. First of all, I can certainly second many of the comments that have been made about the need for significant change in the city of Los Angeles. I have personally supported legislation to give the San Fernando Valley the right to secede from the city of Los Angeles, but I personally would prefer that the city change and reform itself rather than having to have the valley or any other part of the city secede. I've worked for over 20 years in the valley, actually throughout California. Before that, I taught political science, American government for 10 years, so that does influence some of my views about what needs to be done. But in the 20 years that I've worked in the Valley, I have dealt with quite a few of the different organizations, the bureaucracies in the city of Los Angeles, and to use the word that has been used several times before, my frustrations in working with those bureaucracies are almost endless. The list is very long. I can cite working with some that most people here might not have worked with, the Department of Recreation and Parks, the Cultural Affairs Department, in particular, I find very difficult to work with, very unresponsive. 15 years I've been working trying to get cultural facilities built, and in all that time I have had nothing but problems with the Department of Recreation and Parks. That, along with all of the other involvements I've had, have led me to the conclusion that we need some dramatic change. And I'm just going to highlight a few very briefly. Number one, my first priority for change is to give the mayor the power to be the chief executive in Los Angeles, to make the city council the legislative body. The mayor must have the ability, as does the governor and the president of the United States, to hire and fire the top 3 or 4 levels in each of the departments. We cannot hold the departments accountable unless the people at the top are accountable to the mayor, and we cannot hold the mayor accountable for what happens unless the top people are accountable to that mayor. I believe that the entire economic future and the success and survival of Los Angeles depends upon this change. I believe that the commissions, for the most part, should be eliminated. We don't really need them, and I think Councilwoman Chick started to get into that topic, that they really are an anachronism. They were created at a time when the city was smaller, departments were smaller. It was much easier for a part-time commission member to understand what was going on. Today, I don't even think that the commission members are representative or that the public can have a voice through these so-called public representatives. If we have a strong mayor system, a strong chief executive with a strong legislative body in the city council, we don't really need those commissions. I would like to just make one quick comment on the issue of district boundaries. Mr. Stewart raised, the United Chambers is very much interested in the issue, and he has touched on that. I would like to make one very strong comment on this, and that is that the city council must not have the power to draw the boundaries for school board members. This is especially important when we create 2 new school districts in the San Fernando Valley. We must change the charter so that there is no question that the school district boundaries will be drawn in the new districts by the districts themselves and not by the City Council of Los Angeles. As I said, I really appreciate your willingness to be out here, and I will again echo Mr. Stewart's comments that we would like you to come back, if not the last hearing, certainly come back to the San Fernando Valley again. I hope that a year from now, I and many of the others here will be more sophisticated in providing information about how the city charter could be reformed. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Yadi Hashimi. He will be followed by Ron Ingram.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to thank all the commissioners, and I do not live in the Valley. I would like to thank the people of Valley for pushing forward with their demands so that we indeed now are trying to create a new charter for the city. I am a city employee myself, and a little later on I'll speak to that. But foremost, I'm the director of an organization called Citizens 2000, and I consider Los Angeles to be my community. I too also believe that Los Angeles is a great city, but let's face it, we are also in a crisis. And the crisis has not started in the last couple of years. We have had riots in this city. We have had racial divisions create kind of divisions amongst us. We have totally different perceptions of the reality before us. Now, having said that, I do believe that we have no excuse not to become the greatest city on the face of this earth for the mere fact that this is the West. People are still coming here. On the other side of the Pacific Ocean, we have the great majority of expanding markets. Los Angeles today to America is what New York City was to America a century ago. We are there. We can take advantage of these great opportunities if we are able to overcome our problems. Now, therefore, I would start with the question of problems. We have specific problems that we need to address. It's not easy to talk about, but I think that if you talk to anyone in this city, ultimately you would hear that our racial problems, indeed, are problems we need to be worried about. Now, that may not appear on the surface to be the problem. It may not appear that we have problems getting along with one another, because our population really doesn't. We get along with one another very well. But the political system we have set up does not allow for our politicians to go beyond race and ethnicity. So the number one change I believe we need to make is to reform the institutions, to reform the Los Angeles City Council so that there is an incentive for council members to go beyond their own little districts and worry about the entire city. So in as far as the 3 areas of institutions, management, and participation is concerned, my number one recommendation would be to reform the institution so that we have at least 6 at-large members that are elected by the people of Los Angeles to be as part of that council. Now, we need to have representation from the various districts. There is no need to increase the number of districts. We need to maintain the 15-member councils, but create 6 at-large positions so that there will be an incentive to go beyond this district-by-district approach, so that there is an incentive for our politicians to get involved with larger issues that affect the entire city. Now, people may claim that, well, this would result in certain parts of the city having more representation because people have money. We can still have the requirement that the at-large members be from the districts, that they cannot be from any, that they can run from any particular district, but they would have to be from various districts. They cannot come from, all one district. That is just one example I was hoping to bring up. That now, on the issue of participation, we need to, this is the future we are writing a charter for. This is the charter for the 21st century. In as far as diversity is concerned, I'm convinced that we've so far only been paying lip service to diversity. We have not really even begun to fully recognize what potential there is to diversity if we can really manage it well. Now, as far as participation is concerned, it's also related to the way we run our institutions. If we can create a situation where we can allow, just as an example, that's just a recommendation, trying to say that we need to be innovative. If we allow our citizens, our residents of the city, to cast more than one vote for our elected officials. So that let's imagine each one of us, each resident of the Los Angeles city is allowed to cast 2 votes, one for an at-large member, one for a district member. Or give them the freedom. If they want to cast their 2 votes for the same representative from their own districts, let them do that. But at least this would give us a measure of where we are in terms of race relations. Now, I'm not saying that this is the solution. No. What I'm saying is that what I have seen so far coming from this commission, and I have a great deal of respect for the work that has already taken place in recent months in coming up with the work plan and all. And what I've seen from the elected members, the elected commission members, unfortunately doesn't go beyond what we need to go. It's basically trying to, rearrange the chairs on the Titanic. Now, in the area of management, and that's what I meant when I said that as a city employee, I'll come back to that. The reason why LA is not like Chicago or Detroit or New York City, in that we don't hear of all embezzlements and money laundering and misuse of power, is because we do have a strong civil service system. However, as a city employee that has been working for the City Department of Transportation for 12, 13 years now, would be the first one to tell you that the way we are running our city operations is totally archaic. We have managed to buy good computers and put them in the offices, but we have not learned how to link these computers. And I'm just using that as an analogy. There is no reason to have all these different departments at a time when flexibility to respond to the changing needs of society is the most important factor. If you remember during the, I'll try and be brief in the remainder of my comments. During the presidential election, I remember President Clinton spoke of how many jobs we are all going to have to change in our lifetime. Well, city government also needs to reflect that reality. This is a changing world. So city government has to become flexible so that all these, for example, city departments during the times of election, for example, can join and help the city clerk office in trying to get the population involved in the election. I'll just make one last comment, and I'll be very brief in that. I would recommend that this commission, which has already gone through the task of coming up with a work plan, share that work plan with the elected commission with the goal of consulting with them, and then come out with a call to action. Most of the people here are already either involved in their communities or they are, elected commissioners or are going to be elected commissioners. We need to go out of our way to get people involved in the process. This time we cannot afford to ignore that responsibility. Come up with a call to action by both commissions that goes out to universities. Let universities take initiative. We shouldn't have to hold their hands. Neighborhoods, every institution, because this is by far the most important issue. Now, the last comment I think would be interesting for everybody to hear. A few days ago, a couple of weeks ago on one of the TV programs, I heard that San Fernando Valley alone brings in $4 billion in income, so-called, money that we raise because of the porno industry, pornography.
Mr. Hashimi, I would ask you try to wrap up. You're past well past the time.
Okay, this is the last comment. Now, Other friends spoke of how the financial problems we have in Los Angeles and the question of taxation. Obviously, we don't want to tax our people anymore. But start looking, perhaps you can bring in a quarter of that $1 billion for a city that its entire budget is $4 billion. Look at new ways of generating money so that we can take care of our population. Thank you very much, and I'm so sorry I went over time.
Thank you very much. Our commissioners who did not want to miss any of the testimony also wanted to ask if they could take a break in a minute. So we're going to have two more speakers, Mr. Ingram and Mr. Gordon Murley, then take a very, very short 3 or 4 minute break. Before we have Mr. Ingram, though, Alex Glickman, one of our commissioners, has to leave and asked to be able to make a comment before she did.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm a resident of the San Fernando Valley. I was born and raised here. I went to North Hollywood High, Walter Reed, and I still seem to have gotten, thank you very much, and I live in Valley Village. I'm very concerned, too, about the whole secession issue. I am desperately in love with Los Angeles and the San Fernando Valley, and I think it would be very important, and I would like to ask my fellow San Fernando Valley commissioners to offer that we do meet more regularly, because I agree with the Chamber's voice that says this should not be the first nor should be the last time. So I've asked Dr. Sunshine to set up a schedule that we can meet again in a venue such as this, to meet more regularly, perhaps every other month or so. I think it is critical that as we represent the San Fernando Valley, our needs are very different, and yet at the same time they are very similar to the rest of the city. I think Ms. Fiedler made a great comment, and that is we all feel like we need to be heard and a piece of the action. So I would like to stress that to you, that as a commitment as a San Fernando Valleyite to other San Fernando Valleyites. My goal, and I hope those of other commissioners from the Valley, will get together more regularly in these same types of forums, because what you are thinking matters very much. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you, Alex.
Could I ask Alex a question, Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
I heard your comments but I'm not sure I understood them. Did you say that you would like the commissioners who represent the Valley to meet more often in the Valley as opposed to the whole?
No, I'm saying that forums such as this, we'll still have the forums, as we go to the different venues, but I think it is important that the commissioners who live and basically represent the Valley participate more frequently with our community, and it's a very large, diverse community. It's a huge geographic community. That's my comment.
That's what I wanted to clear, because I think what you're suggesting is in addition to the, if I might, Mr. Chair,
yes,
the meetings that are the formal commission meetings in every single segment of this community, and I appreciate Bobby Fiedler's comment earlier. This is about people, not bricks and mortars. I think in every single area of our city, that it is a good idea that we have I don't want to call them subgroups, but that we have the opportunities for there to be clusters, I guess, cluster meetings or something of that sort.
That's right.
Just want to clarify that you were not suggesting that only the Valley would do that. I think it's good that everybody ought to be able to have those opportunities, which are real opportunities both for the citizens and for ourselves. Thank you.
We have two speakers, and then we'll take a break. Everybody who has put a card in will be able to finish. We have about, I'd say, 10 or 12 speakers left. First, Ron Ingram, Chairman of the Atwater Village Citizens and Merchants Association, and then followed by Gordon Murley.
As I told Laura Schick, we'd like, Mr. Chairman, would you be kind enough to ask every reporter to stand and tell us which part of the media they represent?
Well,
I had to go to the chief executive officer and the publisher of the Times and go round and round today. There's nothing in the Times whatsoever about your meeting.
Well, actually, there was a statement, but it was in the Valley, only the Valley edition of the Times, a notice about the meeting. But, Mr. Murley, we are interested in
I beg your pardon, sir. We get the Valley edition. It was not in today.
All right. Why don't you go ahead with your remarks.
All right, would you please have the reporter identify himself?
We're not going to do that. We're
Okay,
taking
well-
testimony here today from people who want to tell us what they think we ought to do with the charter, and we're anxious to do that, but I'm not
Well,
here today.
the publisher of the Times had leaned on his editor to call me, and he assured me there would be someone here tonight, and they apologized because there wasn't anything in there. And the Times blamed it on your staff that they should have again contacted them. And of course, I don't have to tell you about the front page of the Daily News or the editorial. But we're greatly concerned if we're not getting this information to the public, then something's wrong. Now, this is an objective criticism of your staff. Would you believe that Charlie is here? He's one of four. The 13th and 4th district, we all met together, and the two from the 4th and the two from the 13th all spoke together in the Silver Lake area, which is adjacent to us. All right. But I had some of those people call me this afternoon, and I asked them, they received your fax invitation as late as this afternoon. That's incredible. That's as bad as the Times. This is inexcusable. Now, I've discussed this with Karen Tobin and with Mr. Sunshine, your executive director, but we must have accountability on the part of your commission on getting publicity out. And this gentleman and someone else echoed it, have the last meeting in the Valley. No, let's have a giant meeting for all sections of the city, like in one of the sports arenas or something, so we can all hear what your final recommendation is to the city council, and the same with the elected ones. Because we have a right to know what we are going to vote on, because the end result is whatever you do, the council does, whatever that you recommend, the elected ones recommend, we, the people, will make that decision, but we want to be educated before we make that decision. Now, there are a couple other things that I would like to clarify. Why in the city of Los Angeles do we have to have 500 signatures for someone to run for office and pay a $300 fee, or 1,000 signatures and no fee, when the state of California only requires 50 signatures? That's something that you people should take a look at, all right? Because we obviously know that those that have organizations can get 1,000 signatures with no problem. But someone else that wishes to run and is worthy of running and is capable, they're out in left field unless they have the financial means to form an organization. Another thing that really hits all the people, we're all right now recoiling from the bond issue on the schools, BB. We would like to see that in the charter it should say that assessments or bond issues like this, but especially the assessments, would have a sunset clause and not be like what's going on now by the County of Los Angeles saying, indeed, we're not increasing, there'll be no more charges for the fire in the county and the library. We'll just continue that assessment, which was a sunset clause. It was supposed to top. We'd like to see it on all such city funds, because we're getting to the point now that the public is going to say a pox on all your houses and vote no on everything, and some of the very worthy things that we need would not have a snowball's chance in certain places. Another thing that I would like to bring your attention, your budget. Okay, your budget is actually $1,100,000, is it not? Why do we hear in the media that it's $1,200,000 or $2 million without a correction from your staff? The public has a right to know, and certainly when it comes to money, an absolute mandatory right to know. Now, we talked when Charlie was running, and it's not my district, he's in the 4th district, okay? When the 13th, the 4th, one of the things that was brought up, one of the people running said they'd like to see these little communities that are going to have community commissions, that they be paid, get a stipend, or get per diem. They have a paid staff, and that they have an office. This is incredible. We're talking about another layer of bureaucracy and millions of dollars. This should not ever be under consideration. Now, in my organization and everyone I know of in my area of the city, and I go to city council meetings and I see it throughout the city, they're volunteers, they meet at night, They don't go to be paid. As a matter of fact, we end up coming out of our own pockets to take care of expenses that are needed. This should be a consideration and not another layer of bureaucracy. Okay, I think I've taken up enough time, but I would like to tell you that's an objective criticism. Your staff has been, and your commission, because you all must know this, have been negligent in that respect, and so have parts of the media. And let's get cooperation. And at the very end, please, let's consider the whole city, not just the Valley, not my 13th district, not the 4th or anywhere else, but let's have a public meeting large enough, the convention center or somewhere else, so you present it to the citizens of the city of Los Angeles and not any geographical specific location. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, before we take a break, is Gordon Murley.
Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, I'm president of the Federation of Hillside and Canyon Associations, which is 51 member groups, president of San Fernando Valley Federation, which is 18 member groups, and I'm also president of Woodland Hills Homeowners. So I cover 10 council districts in the city. And I can guarantee you that it doesn't matter which of those, or if I talk to the people in the other 5 and the 15, they all feel totally disenfranchised by their council members. They feel disenfranchised because they are asked to pass bond issues, and the council and the mayor and the city employees show no concern that it is the public's money, and there has been no accountability whatsoever, and there is no accountability currently in the charter that would hold them responsible personally for misusing funds for which they told the public they were to be used. They will be coming back and asking for more money to do the things that the people already voted to have done. For those of you that don't know, let's just talk about 911. Let's talk about a building being bought instead of putting fire sprinklers and systems in buildings. And we could go on ad infinitum. They're also concerned because there's no protection with the city council passing their own bonds without it. Number one right now is the sports arena. Nobody is asking the public to vote on this. It's done behind closed doors. This has got to stop. All of the memorandums of understanding that are done in this city that cost the taxpayers billions of dollars because they do it behind closed doors and give pay raises. They give bonuses to employees without following those items which they are supposed to. Also, the city people are disenfranchised in this city because the city attorney is the corporate lawyer for the city employees. In the county, you have county council who gives counsel to the Board of Supervisors. Not in the city of Los Angeles. The district attorney does not become the corporate lawyer for the county, nor does the state attorney general become the corporate lawyer for the people in Sacramento. But in the city of Los Angeles, he becomes the corporate lawyer. Then, because he has a conflict of interest, we end up paying multi-million dollars out in monies for private attorneys because he can't do the job. So I think one thing you've got to look at in the charter very hard for the protection of the citizens as well as the employees of this city is make it so that the city attorney's office can function for what it should be functioning and not just a facade, which is currently it is in the city. When we go up over $65 million because it's easier to give a settlement than to vigorously do things, and when we see the public has to sue the city to get the city attorney to do things, and then he can't even defend the city because he has a conflict of interest within his own department, it becomes a great problem to us. But I can also tell you that one of the things that's very disconcerting in the city is the city council promised the people an ethics commission and ethics in this city, but they passed that particular ordinance before it went on the ballot. The public very foolishly passed it, and all that they got was a very expensive city council because they got a 47% pay raise. They do not have an ethics commission that operates because it is controlled by the mayor and others within the city council. It is not independent. You have to put independence when you're going to have things. You have no independence on the commissions, as other people have told you in this city. This is not acceptable. That they are beholden to those who appoint them. They were supposed to be there for the people. But I can tell you, we can go through the city code book and show you what is supposed to happen, and it's 180 degrees from what it is. Findings are supposed to be made, and they're supposed to be made legitimate. They're all over the place. I like the guys as my council, as a council person, therefore we'll make the findings. They're inconsistent. They aren't true. They're bogus. The public has no protection. You had somebody stand up here and say how terrible it is on developers, but there's no protection of the public. Once he gets it, he can continue and continue and continue and not build something until when he finally builds it, it doesn't meet code. It doesn't have anything that even resembles what the community plan said. So if you're going to make those type of changes within it, then give them back to the public. So if he gets a permission to do something, he has a drop-dead date by which he has to do it, not drag it out for 15 or 20 years. We also have development agreements that have been given in this city for extremely long periods of time without any protection to the public. The public can't change any of it, but the developer has the right to come in and make all the changes he wants to make without public hearings. There are not protections within this for the people you're extracting the money from. I don't know whether you ever read Dr. Peter's book, The Peter Pyramid, but if you haven't, perhaps you should read it, because the Peter Principle, which he wrote, speaks very well of some of the problems with the way the city is managed, and there is not accountability. But the biggest problem in the city is every time they want to cut services, they cut the person who delivers it, not the upper management. And we are so overburdened with top management that cannot perform, will not perform, that services can't possibly ever be funded because of the way it is. So if you're going to do something with this charter, let's know where we're going to go with it. Let's know what we want to do with it as a commission. And I hope to heck you don't get enamored with the process and forget why you're here. You are here to try and get something that will make this city become functional for the citizens who are paying a great amount of taxes and getting very little back into it for what is promised to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murley. We'll take a 5-minute break and be back to continue with the hearing. All right, we're going to resume our testimony here with the public hearing of the Charter Reform Commission. Our next speaker is Kip Kennedy, Department of Building and Safety, and I want to remind all the speakers, as I did earlier, that we try to keep remarks under 5 minutes. Thank you. Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you. I'm not here as a representative for the department. I'm really here just for general public safety and trying to give you some nuts and bolts. I appreciate what you're trying to do. I know you're going to take a lot of hits. I'm just going to try to give you some information as to what actually... I'm sorry. Is that better?
Yes.
I'm sorry. What I'm going to try to do is just give you some nuts and bolts as to a daily operation. This would probably be directed towards your management committee. What has happened is that a lot of the incidents that you've heard tonight, especially like on Orion Avenue, trying to commit enforcement to maintain the neighborhoods. Take, for example, you look at Burbank or Culver City or City of San Fernando. You have areas where inspectors have less than 1 square mile. In some of our council districts, some inspectors have as much as 15 square miles. The other problem is that if a violator, say of a zoning ordinance, if he has anybody in City Hall or he has some political clout someplace, he can call up and the enforcement that is written against the property can be alleviated. In some cases, the inspector will be transferred just for trying to do his job. Now, this is not isolated. This has happened 40, 50 times in just the last 4 or 5 years to lots of inspectors, just for trying to do their job. We've had certain situations such as automotive. We've had such a bad situation with illegal auto shops that they had to create a separate division years ago just to handle that. Now there is possibly some way that the state may come after the city because we're not enforcing the so-called energy regulations, weather stripping and insulated light fixtures. We can't cover the time and span. They want us to make 14, 15 inspections. It can't be done. If you have a violation situation, it'll take upwards of half an hour just trying to explain it. And please understand that a lot of these are state-mandated codes. There's going to be no way that you as a commission can change that. We're stuck with having to enforce it. We don't make the code. The people feel that they don't have the response from building and safety because of the frustration that we face as inspectors just trying to commit enforcement. We're not given the proper time. They feel that we don't deserve the computers necessary. They've looked at certain aspects of that. I'm with the Earthquake Division now. I was on Orion Avenue. There's been so many cases where the owners of these properties filed appeals. There was one aspect, and you heard it from Fred Gaines tonight, yes, there should be a due date when you have to put up, shut up, tear it down, clean it up. That must be enforced, and right now I'll tell you it is not enforced. That should be looked at, and a lot of it has to do with what's known as department policy, and in many times that overrides public safety. Please hear me on this. Another point to that is the fact that the mileage that the inspector has to run because of the size and the area, time off, illness, car breakdown, whatever, just extends the problem out and exacerbates this. The situation also with Fred tonight, what he spoke about, he used every trick in the legal book to extend a violator's right to appeal for 5 years. Laura Chick had to sit on the committee. She had to go through this because Fred filed the appeals, and it took the entire weight of the neighborhood, and they were getting pretty frustrated. They have to go downtown, $8, $10 just to park the car, walk 2 or 3 city blocks to get into a hearing that may have been canceled, delayed, whatever, and it creates a lot of frustration. There needs to be local community control and direct to the area enforcer of all the departments, and I'll finish this up. Building and safety works closer with the neighborhood on a day-to-day basis more than any other department. Sure, you call 911 or the police, but that's on local isolated incidences, okay? So please take this into consideration, and I hope we meet again and more often, and please advertise. You do have people that are very interested, and there are some dedicated city employees. That gentleman tonight, you heard part of his frustration tonight, and I know in his department, again, it's partly due to department policy, and it supplants public safety. So please consider this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Our next speaker is Monique Breyer, followed by Walter Prince.
My name is Monique Breyer, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm not representing any groups. I'm a homeowner in Tarzana, a small business owner. I'm one of those 80% in the city who are small business owners, and I'm a lifelong resident of the city of Los Angeles. I'm very excited to be here today, and I'm interested to see what kind of work the Commission is interested in turning out. One of the things that I heard from the first couple speakers is how we can increase the effectiveness of the city, make the city work better. But I think a very essential or a very important component of being effective is that we have to have honest government. And contrary to some of the people who've spoken today, I've personally experienced working as a consultant for the city some horrendous violations of ethical and perhaps other laws, and a lot of turning of the blind eye and not protecting the taxpayers' interests. I'm going to give you a quick example, and then I'm going to tie it back to some other things. I did work as a consultant for the city in the Bureau of Sanitation for about 3.5 years. During that time, I observed and documented literally millions of dollars of waste of taxpayers' money. Also in public contracts, I saw misappropriation of funds, conflict of interest problems such as nepotism, cronyism, city employees getting their wives or friends hired as consultants on projects, and then they're supervising their spouses and relatives. Blatant things like that. I saw things that would indicate possible kickbacks. None of these issues are ever addressed, and then if a taxpayer or somebody wants to be a whistleblower and point this out, the taxpayer ends up getting jilted twice in a sense, because first there's these misuses of funds. The second thing that happens is if a lawsuit arises, the city attorney then defends the bad behavior of these city employees. And for that reason, I'm not really so sure that I like the idea of a strong civil service protection, because what ends up happening is if there are people working in city government who do not believe in being honest and ethical and who are basically out looking for their own interests, and they commit things, do things that are wrong, break laws, or do ethical things that are wrong, the city attorney, meaning the taxpayer, defends them again. They have no accountability, no personal responsibility, and then they get a nice big fat pension when they retire. And I feel that the taxpayer really gets reamed on a number of occasions because of that. Now, Dr. Caden spoke about what she thought was a lack of funds in this city. I don't believe there is a lack of funds, and I'll tell you why. I think if the city can have millions of dollars of funds that are misappropriated and wasted of the taxpayers, it sounds to me like the city's got plenty of money to blow. And like some of the other people who've spoken here, as I pay business taxes as well as homeowner property taxes, I am very reluctant to vote for any bond measure or assessment when I see these kinds of misappropriations. And one of the things that I would like to see the Charter Commission look at is to come up with some laws to make public officials, and I mean down to the lowest level, people accountable for their behavior and for the money that they're spending, and to have sanctions, including firing them if they're involved in wrongdoings. Until that occurs, I am having a hard time supporting bond measures, and I do need to say that I come from a family that has a tradition of supporting public education, free medical, public services such as library, parks, things like that. We're strong believers in that, but when we constantly see money misused or ballot measures put out, like this recent thing with the bond measure for the schools, I'm embarrassed to say, in a sense, I voted against it because I believe in our schools, and I attended LA Unified. But the money ends up disappearing down a hole, and the next thing you know, they want more money from us. So what I would like to ask you to look into and consider is strengthening municipal laws or writing municipal laws that have to do with conflict of interest, those sorts of things, because what I found when I dealt with the Ethics Commission and contacted them is they said, well, the city really doesn't have any conflict of interest laws, which about made me fall out of my chair. That the city had, that you had to rely upon state law, and the state law, once I researched it, was actually very weak. So I think without accountability, that our civil service system encourages people who really don't always engage in the interest of the taxpayer and the residents of this city. That's all I have to say, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Breyer. Our next speaker is Walter Prince, followed by Arnice Finley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Walter Prince. I'm representing Pride, which is a homeowners group in the Northwest Valley. I'm also a director of the Northridge Chamber of Commerce. I just wanted to make a couple of points to you folks. I'm concerned about the final product that you come up with 2 years, 2.5 years from now, and whether it's going to pass. I really think, and we had Mr. Kiefer last night at the United Chambers speaking to us. I'm also a member of that, representing the Northridge Chamber. I'm really concerned that you waste your time for 2 years. You folks are all volunteers, and I don't want to see that. I'm sure your hearts are where they belong, and I'm sure you're going to put out the very best product you can. And then it's going to be up to the voters. But you've got so many competing interests that are going to be tugging at you for the next 2 years. You've got competing interests mostly in the city. You've got the unions, you've got the school district commissioners, the mayor, the council, proprietary departments, the CRA, city services, neighborhood councils. There's just a tremendous amount of issues for you to look at. And I fear that if you put that in one big package and try to shove it down the voters' throats, you're going to get bounced. I really have a lot of problem with that. Marvin Browdy's already left, but he can attest to that from his commission that he headed back in 1969, 1970. I would really like to see, if at all possible, for you folks to put that commission, the charter that you come up with, in pieces. I don't know how you're going to do it, but I think it's something you really have to consider. If you get 30% of it passed, 80% or 100%, it's better than getting nothing passed. I just fear that you're going to have some minor thing that just grates on people, and they're going to vote against a lot of great work that I'm hoping that you're going to do in the next couple of years. So that's something I'm just tossing it out at you to think about. The only other thing I'd like to talk about are the neighborhood councils, and that is a big issue. It's a hot button item, and I'd just like to make a couple of points with it. I am a homeowner, and I'm very active in homeowner issues throughout the city. If you decide that neighborhood councils are the way to go, I suggest that you make them elected, not appointed. Appointed councils are like commissions. Up in our district, I'm in the 12th district, Hal Burnson has had for many, many years appointed citizens advisory committees. I'm on 3 of them myself. They're a fine thing, they're a wonderful thing, but they're tokens. If Councilman Burnson wants something, he'll get what he wants, and the committee has wasted its time. So I look at appointed neighborhood councils, if that's what you select to have as neighborhood councils. I look at them as pretty much the same kind of a waste of time for the citizens that are on them. On the other hand, if they are elected, there are some advantages that I think are pretty obvious, but I'll state them. Number one, for somebody to get elected to a neighborhood council, he's going to have to campaign, he or she. And if they're going to campaign, that means they've got a commitment. It's not a meaningless appointment for political reasons or because you have nobody else to fill it up and you grab the first guy that walks down the street and say, would you serve on this committee? If you're going to campaign, you're going to be committed to the cause. And I think that's the kind of people that you want serving on neighborhood councils. The very fact that the neighborhoods will be empowered by these councils means that you're going to have community involvement. And what you're hearing tonight, and you're going to hear for the next 2 years, and you all know it anyway, is the total frustration that people don't have a say in the city. They don't have a say in their communities. They don't have a say anywhere. If you involve them in their communities, they'll have a say because they are making the decisions that are going to affect their communities. So the involvement and the empowerment go hand in hand. The next point is that we don't have, and it's especially critical with term limits that we've got in the city council right now, we don't have second and third tier leaders. There are no elected officials on lower rungs. There are no real people who have gotten involved in local government to take over when these elected people now go out of office. Look to your own districts. Each of you has a district that you're from. Look to it now and tell me who's going to replace the current council person in your district. Who's in your district that's enough of a leader that you'd look at now and say, well, there's this person, and this. We don't have any depth in this city. Again, that's an empowerment and involvement problem. And the last thing I would say about the neighborhood councils, if you choose to appoint or to put them in the charter, is that if you don't give them money, they have no teeth. It's just as bad to let them be elected and give them no power to do anything except make suggestions and recommendations to the city. That's meaningless. If the neighborhood councils are going to be effective, they've got to be able to make changes in their communities. And that means money. That means city services. I know it doesn't sit well with the unions. There's no reason the city can't bid against outside contractors on services. There's no reason at all. But they need discretionary funds to control local services. The complaints you hear today are the ones we heard 50 years ago. Potholes, street trees, parks and rec, senior centers. it's all the usual thing. When somebody calls the city and asks for work to get done, a city service to be performed, doesn't get performed, the frustration starts. The neighborhood councils can be very active and very effective in getting services done for their own neighborhoods. And what San Pedro needs, Chatsworth doesn't need. And they have different uses, they have different reasons, they have different needs. And only the local neighborhoods are the ones that know what their needs are. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Prince, but we have a question.
Could I ask Mr. Prince a question? And it really is a question I've been wanting to ask several people tonight who have spoken about the need for, about a concern, a legitimate concern about our ability, of course, to do something that's going to actually get to the voters. I appreciate that we all do. But the one thing that struck me about most of the people who've talked is a kind of dilemma. On the one hand, I've heard a lot of comments that the neighborhood councils, and I endorse neighborhood councils, you should know, ought to be a part of the charter. I personally agree with that. Many people have said that the neighborhood councils have got to be elected. The election of a council is somehow an indication of its independence, which you so eloquently said a minute ago, but I wonder how that sits with the other thing I've heard all night, and we've heard throughout our time here, and I certainly have heard as a former elected official, which is that the competing interests which elect you and are such that it's almost impossible for you to, quote, serve all masters. You said a minute ago that we are, and the elected commission is going to have that same problem, but what distinguishes an election in a neighborhood council so that it doesn't end up with the same problem? Because elections mean that you have to have the ability to persuade the majority of people. That's a broad cross-section. I don't understand the distinction. I just wondered if you would comment on what is the magic about the neighborhood council's election versus an election of a city council or this charter commission or anybody.
Well, hopefully you folks will solve that problem. There is no magic. Elections can be good, they can be bad. I think the key to neighborhood councils is going to be determination of how many there should be. Is a neighborhood council, should it be the size of a city council district now, 250, 300,000 people? I don't think so. I think there should be a lot more. We've got over 103, 104 communities in the city of Los Angeles, named communities in the Thomas Guide. Should there be 103? I don't know. But what you have heard here tonight, and it is a recurring theme, is where's our sense of community? Somebody who lives in Willowbrook is proud to be living in Willowbrook. Somebody who lives in Pacoima or in Sherman Oaks or in Woodland Hills is proud of their own community. And as you heard with Van Nuys, four representatives in one community, it does not thrill anyone. I don't know the number of neighborhood councils there should be, and that's something that if you folks go that way, I think you've really got to give a lot of thought to. My own gut feel is that you're going to need a lot of them. And what do you do about the election process and that? I don't know. I wouldn't want them to be serving for 4 or 5 years. I think year-to-year terms are fine, especially if they're small enough. Let people get to know their neighbors. Let people get to know who's serving on those councils. They'll pass them in the supermarket. If they want to chat with them, they can talk to them. But to have an elected council that's going to serve 100,000 people isn't going to be, I don't think would do anything. I think it's just too big an area. And your problems are really more localized. We may have, I live in Chatsworth. We've got streets up there that need fixing, and we've got streets that don't need fixing. If the budget is going to go to the council, let them decide where they want to spend it. If they say, we don't want streets, we want a senior center, we want a swimming pool, we want a jail, let them decide for their own communities. With city services, I'm not talking infrastructure, major infrastructure improvements. I'm not talking about changing a massive planning process. I'm talking about things that people want. The things that people really care about are what their neighborhoods look like, who's living on their streets, why are they living on the streets, what kind of protection do they have from crime and the other things. And those are all city services. I'm not suggesting you put a police budget in a community or a fire or any other emergency, but I'm talking the infrastructure type of repairs and whatnot that make a neighborhood look nice or don't.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry I can't be more specific, but I think that that's something, if you do go the council route, you've really got to give a lot of thought to how big should the councils be.
Got another commissioner who wants to ask a question.
Mr. Prince, I'm interested in the question that you raise about the services. How do you see that affecting the departments?
I see the departments having to compete with private industry, and I see nothing at all wrong with that. The federal government's been doing it for years. I'm in a janitorial business. We do an awful lot and have done an awful lot of military bases all over the country. And the military started 10 years ago a process whereby their own people would bid against the contractors. Sometimes they win, sometimes the contractors win.
You're suggesting that each community council would be hiring services,
Correct.
and so the department would not exist as such. For instance, building and safety wouldn't exist as such, or you mentioned the potholes.
Let's take street maintenance.
So in other words, each community council, in your view, would hire people to fix the potholes?
Building and safety, as an example, would not be affected. That's, I don't consider that a city service. That's a building and safety issue. That goes along with planning. But let's take a pothole. If my community council and neighborhood council in the city, in the community of Chatsworth, has a pothole, whoever is on that council, it's up to them. If I want to go lobby them and say, fix this pothole on my street, I'm welcome to do it. I don't have to march downtown. I don't have to pick up the phone and try for 3 weeks to get somebody on the telephone and have them say, you're on a waiting list for 4 years. You know, our street trees are trimmed every 10, 15, 20 years. That's nuts. If we've got a problem in our community, I want to be able to go direct to the people who will be my neighbors and say, here's a problem, let's fix it. I belong to a homeowners association. A lot of people do. We have problems in our own little associations, but we know about them and we fix them. Now, if I were on that council and I've got a pothole, I'll call the city and say, how much? If they say $100, I'll then call Charlie's pothole service and say, how much? If Charlie says $25, he fixes my pothole. If the city is cheaper, the city gets it. I'm not suggesting disbanding anything, but I am saying the city should become competitive. Part of the problem that you've heard here tonight and from the last speaker is, where's the money going? We have no idea what goes on within the departments. Let them become lean and mean and compete.
Thank you, Mr. Prince.
That's it.
Before our niece Finley begins, I want to say that we have about a half an hour left, and we have about 6 speakers, so if we can keep everybody under 5 minutes, we can get there. But those of you who are running out of time and need to leave, I want to give you an opportunity for an option, and that would be to give your names to either George Wolfberg or Kevin Scott, sitting alertly in the back of the auditorium, and with a phone number, and arrange to contact them and either give a short memo to us or to talk to them on the telephone or talk to any of the commission staff on the telephone during the next week if you're running out of time and patience waiting. Our niece Finley. She will be followed by Polly Ward.
My name is Arnice Finley. I'm from Lakeview Terrace, and my speech will be much less than 5 minutes. My concern is informing the citizens. That is, how can we, my concern is in the form of a question. Are there up-to-date charters available in the public libraries? If so, where? Because we find that, I have found that most people don't know what they're talking about or what they're voting for or what questions to ask of you. So, are there charter, up-to-date charter booklets available?
I'm going to let Dr. Sonnenschein answer that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm very happy to briefly answer that question because we've been working on the same question ourselves, which is how to make the charter accessible to people so that people can actually join in the debate with a real feeling of confidence. There are copies available of the charter. There's a new one coming out that is a paperback version, which is updated, is coming out from Brackett Publishing soon, But what we're going to do, and have already begun doing with our staff, is compressing the main points of the charter into some forms that are going to be more usable by the public. And we're going to try to make that work at several different levels. We'll be doing that through our website and also through distributing materials to summarize in the most effective way possible. Unfortunately, with the charter, you start in section 1 and you end up in section 3 and you're trying to follow the thing around. We're going to try to restructure that as a teaching tool so that people can then join in the debate. So you're exactly where we are of trying to make it as accessible as possible to the public.
So where do I go? I mean, personally, where would I go, let's say tomorrow?
Okay. The library, the public library would have copies of it. There are copies available, I believe, George and Kevin, would you say through the city clerk's office is a place to start? Or, but the library, the LA Public Library would be the best place to go.
Okay, that's what I'm interested in, the public library.
Yeah.
I see the other hand up there.
Yeah, Bob. If you do not get it, your local library, call the commission, and we'll get a hold of the library department to get a copy out to that library.
That sounds
we'll
good.
make sure.
So I do,
Does that
how do
help
I,
answer your question?
how do I call?
Okay, our telephone number is 213-367
367.
5234. And let me repeat that in case anybody wants to call us on any matter, because we'll be following up with you after this meeting. 213-367-5234.
And your name is?
My name is Rafe Sonnenschein.
And that's the person I would ask for?
Yes, although we also have other staff people who will make sure you get the information. And if anything goes wrong, though, and you don't get it, also make sure to get hold of me. But we will get back to you, definitely.
Thank you very
as
much.
soon as possible.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Polly Ward. Is Polly Ward still here? Our next speaker then is Barbara Barr, followed by Gary J. Hartung.
Hello, thank you for giving me this opportunity. Everything that I wanted to say, I feel, has been pretty much covered. I am on the board of the Encino Property Owners Association, and I think the one thing that hasn't been said is the fact that we hope that with the two commissions, that you work together so that we don't end up with one going this way and one going that way, so that there is such a diverse group of changes, a different charter, a different form, that there's no way that they can get together. You have the appointed, you have the elected. You are both going for the same goal. And what we are looking for is an end product that will give the best life to the citizens of all the communities in Los Angeles. Everything else has been covered, and it's late.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Gary Hartung, followed by Jeff Brain.
The suggestion about neighborhood councils could be very effective if they're used as a source to inform members of the community. For example, this big mess we're having now with the subway construction over the past several years, perhaps that could have been alleviated many years ago by having community councils at which you could have guest speakers come and discuss the pros and cons of a subway as opposed to using existing rail lines or having the Metrolink use Southern Pacific, whatever other railroad lines exist at the present time, building above ground rail systems that might parallel existing lines. There's entirely too many things in this city that are put upon the citizens that we have had absolutely no say in their coming to fruition. Even things like, should we have a professional football team here? I don't need the mayor to make that decision for me. I don't need a city councilman. I don't need a supervisor for my district of the county telling me these things. I want to make that decision. But before I do, I want to become as informed as I can be. And that is one of the things that would be a very constructive asset to have a city community, or what did you call them, neighborhood councils formed. There's just been too many things in this city that transpire that I have had absolutely nothing to say about, and it's very irritating when these things come to fruition and I, as a taxpayer, have had to pay for them, and I have nothing to say. I don't want this subway extended any further. There's been entirely too many problems with it. I would just rather have some type of above-ground rail system, but I don't have anything to say about it. It's going to be foisted upon me, and I don't like it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hartung. Next speaker is Jeff Brain, and the final speaker I have a card for is Ida Gervin. Although Ida Gervin has written a question in the back here, I don't know if Ida's still here. I see.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to come and speak. First, I applaud you for your efforts. I know you're volunteering for this, and it's a massive task. I had run for the elected charter commission, was not successful, but I wish you all the luck. I also chair Valley Vote for the Valley. I co-founded it. I also chair what's called the Alliance for Self-Determination, which is an extension of Valley Vote. It's an alliance coalition of groups throughout Los Angeles that are working for their communities, to empower their communities, whether by local neighborhood councils or charter reform or through actual detachment or secession, as some people call it. And that includes San Pedro, Wilmington, Venice, Pacific Palisades, Hancock Park, South Central, Hollywood, you name it, West LA, Westwood. All of these communities are very frustrated. And so the work that you're undertaking, I can't impress upon you how very important it is, because if it fails, this city is going to explode. You know, legislation is passing in the Sacramento, and we do expect we have the votes to pass the legislation empowering neighborhoods to vote as to whether they want to stay in Los Angeles or not. And not that people want to exercise that vote, but they feel by having that vote, it's the ultimate means of holding our elected officials accountable. And it's the ultimate leverage to make sure that meaningful reform comes out of efforts like this. I also am working with the community leaders of the 5th District. We formed what's called the 5th District Committee for Meaningful Government Reform. This includes all the homeowner groups and the business groups in the 5th District. And we have started meeting, and we'll be meeting just about every 2 weeks, to work on charter reform proposals that we can bring to you, and we'll issue it in a form of a report. We did a survey. Our first task was to do a survey of what people felt were the highest priorities. And this is a fairly large district and well organized. I will hand that in to you. Top priority was making city government more responsive. Second was making city government more accountable. Third was giving neighborhoods greater control over local issues. Then stronger enforcement, which you've heard many times today people complain about. And then making government more efficient. And it goes down to 16 items. And I'll hand that in to you. In taking our first meeting, we talked about making government more responsive. And what we came up with was perhaps and this would satisfy the detachment effort or the secession effort, is boroughs. The original charter did provide for boroughs. And we have a massively large city, 467 miles. Attached to what I'm going to hand you in, and you've probably all seen this by now, is the map that shows how we can fit 8 other major cities in Los Angeles. Have you all seen that? You know, you can fit Milwaukee, St. Louis, Cleveland, Minneapolis, San Francisco, Boston, Pittsburgh, and Manhattan, all within the boundaries of Los Angeles. We're massive. And you take St. Louis. St. Louis has, and it's just a little area, and you'll get this, it's maybe the size of West LA, has 17 neighborhood councils. Okay? Their council people each represent about 14,000 people. And their neighborhood councils actually prioritize capital improvements. They don't make decisions about who gets the contract, but they make priorities on the capital improvements in their areas. So what we came up with in the 5th District so far, and this also includes a listing of different cities and how many people each council office represents. And in the city of LA, it's about 230 to 250,000 people. In most cities across the country, major cities, it's about 20,000 to 40,000 people. And we think that's very important because then you're accountable when it's smaller units. If you're elected out of Westwood, you will be much more sensitive to what happens in Westwood. Right now you have a councilman, our councilman, and I'm not trying to pick on him, but he's representing a district that covers both sides of the hills. And he has problems perhaps in Westwood with a project, but Westwood is such a little component of the vote that he really doesn't have to listen. And so, but if a council person was elected from Westwood and was accountable to the people of Westwood, then there would be less opportunity for special interests to intercede, and people would be held a lot more accountable. So what we're talking about is boroughs. The Valley might be a borough. West LA might be a borough. Metro might be a borough. South might be a borough. In the boroughs, have smaller districts. Let's take the Valley. The Valley has 23 recognized communities. For a city of 1.3 million people, 23 council people is not outrageous. And so have maybe one from Sherman Oaks, one from Van Nuys, one from Studio City, and then have a borough council where they deal with deciding issues in the Valley, planning, parks, those kind of issues, local issues. And then have a certain number of those borough council people sit on a citywide council that decides fire, police, mass transit, those kind of issues. But the single most important issue you can deal with is people of LA feel disenfranchised and they don't want to be advisory anymore. And our city is too big, and the city will explode. We meet frequently, and again, many of us are not in favor of that, but we feel that the city has to prove to us that they're now going to be a better city. People talk about LA being a great city, and what makes it a great city? Is it the size? Because if it was the size, that would make, in terms of states, Alaska the best state, and I don't think we think that. If it's the population, there's certainly more massive populated cities. Calcutta, would we want to live there? I think what makes a great city is the quality of life and the people. And so if we believe that, then let's let the people of Los Angeles have more say in what happens. I don't know how many of you are from the Valley. How many are from the Valley? So few.
Some of them have left already.
Yeah, I'll stop real quickly. I just want to make a point while I'm here on behalf of the Valley groups. The Valley is 35% of the population, and if you want to understand why we're so frustrated, and I think it's important because there's not many of you from the Valley, we're 50% of the land size of Los Angeles. Out of 34 major museums in Los Angeles, there's only one in the Valley. Out of 6.6 million library books in Los Angeles libraries, there's only 1.3 in the Valley. We have 1.1 police officers per 1,000 people. The rest of LA has 2 police officers per 1,000. We have 9 libraries per 100 square miles. The rest of LA has 18 libraries per 100 square miles. Last year, they spent $28 million on resurfacing city streets. Only $4 million was spent in the Valley. And, the emergency response times are routinely longer in the Valley. And the MTA, just with their budget this year of $660 million, is only spending $5 million in the Valley. That's why we're so frustrated. And I think that needs to be dealt with. And the way to deal with it is perhaps to empower regions like ours, whether it's West LA, South LA, or the Valley, to make these issues. I don't know that the Valley would have decided to go with a sports arena. We might have decided to spend more money on police in our area. Let us have those issues and let us discuss those. People are fed up with a local government that is disenfranchised, dysfunctional, inefficient, and somewhat obsessed with its own power, while conditions in our communities, the quality of life in our neighborhoods, continues to decline. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brain. Yes, Marguerite.
Brandon, did you say that you were going to provide us with a study you've done, or you're providing us with some?
Yeah, I have some information that I'll leave with you.
Okay.
I have a survey that we did of the 5th District leaders.
Okay.
And I also have cost of doing business in LA.
But does your study address some of the issues that you reference of? I'd be curious, listening, for example, what you said, whether or not some of the other cities you referenced that were smaller in size had a better quality of life, and what are the indices of quality of life whether or not, whether or not the borough concept is any basis on which to assume that, except as an organizational construct, that a borough concept has any more merit than any other. I'm not arguing with him, just curious to know whether you're giving us some information that is the basis of some research that would inform that particular kind of organization versus another kind of organization, and whether it sounded to me as I heard you make your comments, which were quite interesting, that part of the issue with secession is if there were what amounts to proportionate representation, that in itself might trigger something. I don't know, in terms of quality of life. I don't know whether you mean any of those things or not. I'm just curious to know whether in the document you're going to give us, any of those issues are in fact addressed and can be informing.
Yeah, no, our group is a work in progress. We're going to be issuing you a full report. What I have here for tonight is just the preliminary prioritization of the reasons why we felt government was not, or the quality of life and conditions in Los Angeles are not better. What changes would need to happen, make government more responsive, make it more accountable. So that's what I'm handing tonight. But we'll be issuing your commission and the other commission a full report on our findings. Thanks.
Could you make it available to Kevin, who's right there ready to collect it? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brain. The last speaker I have is Ida Gervin. If there are any other speakers, please let us know. Ida Gervin.
Thank you very much. I am a resident across the street, and I've been trying to get street cleaning since 1988, the year I bought my house over here. And I paid top dollar at that time. Now the price has gone down. That's not your fault. But my taxes are nearly $2,000 a year, and I get nothing for it. I get a dirty street in front of my house. And I would like to know why. I called Councilman Fuhr's office and was told that they had orders from downtown LA that there was to be no more money spent in the valley. Why is that? Does anybody know?
Bob, you wanted to comment on that?
Yes, you're really talking, not to call the councilman. He's trying to help you. But this is under the mayor's office. This is under the street trees, and these departments are under the mayor, not under the city council. The council is really acting as your ombudsman, trying to help you. Have you called the mayor's office?
I have not called the mayor's office, but I have called different places downtown, and they never told me I should call.
Call the mayor's office. They are the heads of the department.
Thank you. I have another, may I add a little bit? About the secession, why the Valley wants to secede. The monorail, we voted on it whenever the vote came up several years ago. We voted for the monorail, and they came along, MTA, and did the underground. And that is upsetting too, because the cost is terrific compared to a monorail, which was cheaper and much better. Thank you. I experienced the monorail in Vancouver, Canada, when I was there for the expo. It was fantastic. We never used our car. We left it at the hotel and just used it to go to the expo. It got us there in no time, and it's very good transportation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gervin. We have one more person who wants to, yes, go ahead.
My name's George Hayden.
Mr. Hayden, after you're through, would you make sure you turn in a card so we can keep a record of...
I'll have to
Thank
make
you.
out one, yes. My name's George Hayden from Woodland Hills. I've been very involved, and I've listened for the last 10 years in trying to keep the communities up. I'm servicing about 30 square miles trying to clean it. I know what this lady's talking about, street cleaning. We're not getting street cleaning in any part of the city. I have talked to my councilwoman. Oh, we're on a high priority, but I've been on a high priority for 10 years. So it really don't mean too much. We have to clean, we got to trim the trees ourselves. We got to clean the gutters ourselves. I've got a commitment so we can get it done through the court system to get court referrals. We are out there every week trying to hold our city together because we are not getting anything from the city services. They came out about 2 months ago and they paved the street after 20 years. Happens to be Fallbrook. About 4 weeks later, they're digging it full of holes. Now we've got about 8 big new holes in because there's water leaks. I call in and I say, this is not new. These leaks have been under this street at Hatteras for at least 4 years. You have had people coming out here and digging up the street 4 times a year and doing some half-ass repair rather than fixing it right. For 4 years you do it. Now they decide to pave the street, and what do? It starts leaking just after they get done. Now it's dug up again. I go down and I talk to the workers there. I says, why don't you come in here with a bulldozer, dig a trench through the street here once and for all, go down and fix the goddamn pipes, and then pave the street. And all that should have been done before. But no, invariably, then not only DWP, this has been DWP street maintenance. Now it was Metropolitan Water District just the other day. All the manholes were already set. Now they're digging up every manhole and raising it or lowering it. I says, can't anybody in this goddamn city ever get anything straight and do it right? We go to graffiti. I've been one of the biggest fighters of graffiti in this town for the last 10 years. Okay, where do we get all our graffiti? On city-owned equipment. Street laying equipment, blacktop layers, bulldozers, trucks. When the contractors come out with their equipment, it's clean. Only the city equipment's dirty. Barricades, they bring them out by the hundreds. And they just set them there and they leave them forever. The goddamn city's got barricades living all over this damn city, full of graffiti. They look like hell. And they tell us these department heads are not, they don't send them out that way. I says, they do send them out that way. I said, look, you could have your city clean. I reported several years ago, about 4 years ago, a couple pieces of equipment with graffiti on. First, I went and talked to the superintendent on the job. A very nice gentleman. I says, look it, mister, see this little bottle of chemical? I carry it in my truck, and we can take this graffiti off. A little scrub pad. It'll only take 5 minutes. He thought it was an amazing idea. He went to his supervisor. I saw him a week later. I says, what happened? Or 2 weeks later. He says, oh, they say it won't work. I says, because they're sitting on their dead butt doing nothing. Look at, if we had every operator have a piece of a bottle of chemical, a scrub pad, and a rag, and you require every operator to clean his or her equipment daily, because don't tell me they don't sit on their dead butts enough. I was in the business. I know. Okay? And at the end of the day, there better be no graffiti on the equipment. As for the barricades, the guys, the workers along the side that are, doing the raking and shoveling the handwork, they could clean the barricades. Our city would be clean. Our city officials don't want to clean up L.A. I've been here for almost 70 years. I was born in this town. It used to be a beautiful town. We cannot say the same today. And I guarantee you, I travel a fair amount. And if I was from another country and I came to Los Angeles and went through downtown Los Angeles and saw all the graffiti and this and that, it would be the last trip I'd ever come to Los Angeles. And they talk about losing revenue. Now, if they would, like getting back to the graffiti, if they would require each operator to be held accountable, that is going to be cleaned up on a daily basis, we would end it. If the operator don't, you start writing up notices, that's called a notice of unsatisfactory service, and you dismiss the person. Not on one thing, it takes about 3 times, it don't take long to do. I fired lots of people, I worked under the merit system for 32 years, I know all about it, I fired probably hundreds of people in my life. It's not difficult. But the way the city says, oh, you can't do it. They got, under the unions and merit system, they got protection. That's all hogwash. I called the city of Los Angeles. I says, please send me a copy of your dismissal procedure. Send me a copy that under each 3 or 4 classifications that employees can be assigned other duties assigned, just 30 seconds, be assigned. They sent them to me. It says that on there, that they can be assigned other duties, not on a permanent basis, but, you know, little minor things. We could solve lots of these problems, but the city is not willing to listen to anybody that's had any experience, new, good, old, bad, or whatever it is, be willing to try new things. Believe me, their management people don't have all the answers. Some of us got a little bit of smarts out here. And I'm not one. There's thousands of people throughout the city that could contribute a hell of a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's our last speaker. Are there commissioners who have comments to make at this time? I'm looking around for commissioners. Let me conclude by just thanking again Valley College, Cal State Northridge, and the Daily News for co-sponsoring this public hearing. I also want to thank all of you citizens who came out from the Valley and other parts of the city to speak to us. We have an historic opportunity and a big challenge before us in reviewing Los Angeles city government, and we can't do it without your input. Those of you who may be seeing this on television, I would ask you to contact the Charter Commission at 213-367-5234. If you have suggestions or material you think we ought to be taking a look at, they will tell you how to get it to us. Again, 213-367-5234 for the Charter Commission. Thank all of you for coming today, and we look forward to more hearings in the future. Thank you very much.